Good afternoon and welcome to the February 14th, 2023 Planning and Zoning meeting for the City of Apopka. If you will please stand with me for the moment of silent prayer and the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. First item is the approval of the minutes of the Planning Commission meeting held January 10, 2023. If there's no discussion, we need a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve it.
Motion by Commissioner Ryan. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Washington. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. At each meeting, we have a public comment section prior to going through the agenda for any items or anything that is not on the agenda itself. Each individual item on the agenda will have a public comment section. So if you're here to comment about a particular item, then you can wait until that item is on the agenda. Anyone have any comments not related to tonight's agenda? Seeing none, we'll move on. Item number 1, Apopka Code of Ordinance Land Development Code Glitch Amendment number 6. Applicant, City of Apopka, Mr. James Hitt.
Thank you, Chair. James Hay, Community Development Director. This is the 6th glitch amendment over the last 3 years, so we do approximately 2 of these every year. The last one was done in May of 2022. The adoption schedule right now, this is obviously Planning Commission for recommendation to City Council. City Council scheduled right now for March 1st for the first reading, and second reading is scheduled for March 15th for second reading and adoption, provided everything goes good for with both boards. There's 2 quick corrections that I wanted to do, and then wanted to point out a couple of the main changes that we're doing. The first one is on the residential 2-family district. The lot width on that, instead of changing from 125 to 120, should have been to 110. We didn't want the lot width for a duplex to be twice as big as a single family, basically, because it doesn't have to account for the setbacks between the buildings, because it's a duplex. The second one is on table 10.2.b or 0.4b, which is under the definitions section, and that one I was supposed to have added in. The third line says, well, the whole thing, I'll just read the whole thing this way, it's clarified. On a single-family dwelling, this is regarding rear decks, porches, patios, and terraces, screened or unscreened. On a single-family dwelling may extend into the rear yard or internal side yard setback, provided at least a 5-foot setback to the rear or side is maintained. And that's the main correction on that one. As I mentioned, rear and side, so I figure I better say both for that, where we're trying to maintain at least a 5-foot area. So that being said, there's a couple real easy ones that we're working on. The first one is the arbor. There's some arbor regulations that we had to amend. This is on section 2.5.4. And there's some exemptions that are put in. We actually had to take out the last line in there in accordance with what was passed by Florida legislation. So we just took it out. That was real quick and easy. Another one is in regards to the informational meeting being waived. Instead of just myself, it can also be the community development director or the designee, because we've got we do have some people that can make those decisions besides myself.
So it allows you to play hooky.
Well, if Gene needed to do it, we can do that too. Yeah. And then the next, like 4 or 5 pages, what we're doing is combining the comprehensive plan, or text map and zoning into one section. Basically, it eliminates a whole section in the land development code. So we're trying to slim down the land development code because the requirements for the advertising and the notifications are all the same for all 3 of those. So it just kind of made sense to slim it down instead of showing the same thing for about 6 pages. It just kind of helps in the land development code itself. After that, one of the big ones that we were going through was looking at the hardship regulations or requirements for variances. If you recall that, this is regarding the variance itself. Our city attorney was able to locate some different language, and we kind of went back and forth quite a bit. But we basically have a better definition or reason for the hardship itself. And in this case, for the purpose itself, we are now saying that a hardship generally occurs when the physical characteristics of a property are such that it cannot be used for any purpose permitted by the land development code. And then further on, it says that the hardship may be created by the surroundings, shape, or topographical conditions particular to that specific property. And then, however, the hardship cannot be self-imposed or the result of the property owner's own actions. So in other words, if we do have karst topography, if we have a strange shape that makes the property a lot more unusable, we can utilize that as a reason to grant a variance. So that helps. That'll help with all of you with some of the decisions that we were
That's a
looking
step
at
in the right
before.
direction. It is.
Yep, yep.
Thank you for that.
And then generally about the same type of thing in the initial determination for the language. There are a couple sections in here that we had to put the correct code section in. One of those is under the base districts, where it says the general intent and standards of each base district, zoning district, as is set forth in section, it should be 3.3, residential base zoning districts through section 3.6. So we're making sure we're directing the people to the right locations for those types of requirements. Flip over here. This is another big one. Under 3.1.3, organization of zoning districts, this is the base zoning district, same location. We were adding a new section 4 for residential subdivisions established prior to March 6th, 2019, which is when we adopted the most current land development code, may maintain primary structure setbacks, this is front, rear, side, at a minimum as originally approved. What's been happening is because, I mean, we've got 20,000 residential structures in town. And a lot of those subdivisions had different setbacks. And when we established the new code, we tried to make everything uniform for some of the base zoning districts, residential zoning districts that we have, which meant that we were going, some of the districts went from 20 to 25 feet for a setback. Others might have been the reverse. But instead of having to worry about having to grant a variance for something that they wouldn't have had to worry about a variance in the past, this establishes or allows us to utilize those old codes for each of those subdivisions. And most of them are usually, we went from 25 to 20 feet. It allows us to utilize that. In fact, as we have a variance that's coming up tonight, that it's exactly that case. They originally had a setback of 20 feet. When we adopted the new code, it went to 25 feet. In that case, the applicants, they're trying to get a jump on the approval or the submittal of building plans to build an addition to the house for the mother. And if that passes tonight, good. If it doesn't pass, in a month, it'll be codified in the land development code that they'd still be able to do it. So that's a little foresight coming up.
I have a question.
Sure.
If an existing subdivision, if they were continuing their build out and it was within the original master plan, wouldn't that automatically be just, the setbacks would be the same as what it was specified in the
Not
original master plan?
necessarily. It would have been the code the way it is today. We haven't really had anybody that couldn't fit it into the new code.
I can see if they were adding to the development, but if the master plan was approved with a specific setback, just because they did or did not build on that property means the setback's still the same.
Unfortunately, the zoning code trumps whatever was originally permitted, and that's what I'm trying to correct with this changes to allow that to continue.
I just,
Yeah.
it seems like common sense that if it was
Oh.
approved at that and we changed the rules afterwards, that you can't go back to them.
Yeah, unfortunately, a lot of times, like you just said, common sense doesn't necessarily prevail.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, you all know this is a pretty exacting thing. We don't get to be arbitrary on, how we're interpreting the code. The code is what it is. And then as I mentioned earlier, the 3.6, the residential two-family district, and the, let's see here, the RMF residential multifamily district, and RMU, the residential mixed-use districts, we are making some changes to the lot width requirements, some of the square footage requirements, and we're also putting in specifications regarding an alley, because as you recall, some of the smaller lots that we're requiring them to have rear-loaded, we had some information regarding alleys, but it wasn't specified. So this specifies that basically it's an 18-foot alley. That's the road right-of-way part in the alley itself. They're all private, by the way. And that's 14 foot of passable, and then 2 feet on each side for like the curb and gutter. So that way it's we have an 18-foot alley that's established. But it also requires, there's another section farther on that requires that no parallel parking is done on the alley, because it's only 18 feet. And that they're lit for lighting, because otherwise it's a dark alley, and we also, for safety purposes, we wanted to require that they be lit. So that way it's covering police and fire for access and for safety purposes. Another one that came up under the mixed-use district for the downtown, we were running into some issues regarding minimum square footage. So under 3.6.3, we put in some minimum square footage for homes. In this case, it's a minimum living area is 1,350 square feet. For multifamily, 750 square feet for one bed, 900 square feet for a two bed or bigger. That's, like I said, that's one of those things we didn't put in, but we've been finding that it was probably a good idea to put in some square footages, since we did it in every other district. Industrial uses. One of the things that's been coming up is we've been having a lot of companies wanting to come in and just park trailers, arbitrary on property. They are supposed to be paved, but then there's nobody to take care of them. There's basically it's open storage at that point. So what we're recommending is that any outside storage as a principal use, such as that, provide a primary building, and then we got the specifications for that building. 1,000 square feet, has to have utilities. It can't just be a pole barn or something that has sides on it, that includes a bathroom, and is also in line with the land development code with the minimum design standards. So that way we're getting an actual usable piece of property, whether it's for rentals or storage of trucks or anything else, but it should have a use there that can actually be used, when somebody's going to park a truck. And then there's a specification regarding accessory structures, so that we don't have somebody coming in and putting in 3 or 4 sheds. We are limiting it to one accessory structure, as described in Table 10.2.4.B. Those include garages or utility sheds on single-family lots. We actually had somebody that put in 3 sheds along the back. And, the whole idea is to keep a certain percentage of your lot is open space, and they've been just filling them up. And as you recall, one of the, I think it was 2 glitch amendments ago, we did increase the size that a utility shed or a garage could go in there. A utility shed can go, instead of 200 square feet, I believe I've got it up to 500 square feet. So it makes it, a good utility shed as a, somebody that likes man caves, that it works for me. Another thing we ended up doing was bicycle parking originally was only required in a couple different districts, the mixed-use district and the mixed-use East Shore district. And we were having issues with that because we've got the KPI that is not a mixed shore, East Shore district, but the developments weren't, there was nothing that said they had to put in bicycle parking. So we took out those 2 districts and just made it for all developments. Let's see here. A real simple one that somebody pointed out regarding open space set-aside standards. The original language for vehicular parking areas or lots, you weren't supposed to include the landscaping areas towards your open space because it's a requirement. Like the one space every 10, or one landscape island every 10 spaces. You can include the outside area, but not the interior parking lot area. So vehicular parking area or lots, including landscape islands, are not included in your open space calculations. Little wordsmithing is the main thing. Another thing that was occurring, and I think we did a variance for this for walls. We were concerned that we were going to have some developments that have interior walls that aren't exposed on the exterior to exterior traffic. And if it's behind a building, nobody's going to see it except for the occupant. Sort of like Winn-Dixie, we had a wall off of, for the Bronson, the Ridge properties on the back side facing the 414. Nobody was going to see it because it was basically you're looking at it and it was down and back behind. So with for the table regarding fences and walls, it gave us some discrepancy in regards to a 15-foot height maximum. So we're still saying a maximum, but it's still going to be more designated whether or not they can do that by the city engineer, so that we have a little bit of discretion regarding the developments. And we're more concerned what the building's going to look like from the road and what the use is and how big it is and the setbacks, things like that. So this gives us a little bit more wiggle room for those walls that nobody's going to see except the people that are working there. Another one that came up, this is, like I said, it's glitch. It can be something we're looking for in the future or something that comes up as a question. Some homes have 3-car garages, but they can only put in an 18-foot driveway. So when you're pulling in, it's a hard turn to try to get in there, and if you don't hit the side of the garage, you're going to go over the swale area. So for a 2-car garage, obviously it's 18 feet. If you add another 9 feet to that, it'd be 27 feet for a 3-car garage. It just kind of made sense. 999. Private streets right now cannot have speed humps. We've been putting speed humps on a lot of public streets, but we do have private streets that are fairly large subdivisions. And so we updated the private street requirement to allow for speed humps. They still have to be in accordance with code, the size of the speed hump, the height, the location, the distance between, and they still have to have permission, basically a petition that's granted by the HOA and by the residents in the subdivision. But this way, it's allowed on a private street too. They should have the same rights as anybody else does. Another big one that came through from the fire department is building numbers. We had no regulation as to what size those numbers had to be. So we have a minimum of 4 inches no matter what kind of building. And then for residential dwelling units, those have to be a minimum, 4 to 6 inches. multifamily 4 to 10 inches, and non-residential structures 4 to 10 inches also. However, it could be bigger depending on the type of structure. In other words, say the hospital wanted to put their number on the building, but they wanted to put it up top next to Advent Health. That's not going to be a 10-inch, it's not going to be a 10-inch letter. That would have to be a little bit bigger. And that, in that case, it would probably count as part of their signage. They aren't going to do that, though. But we do want to take into account some of the 35, 45-foot tall industrial warehouse buildings that are going in that they're up that high, and they might want that unit or that building number on the building because they have different unit numbers that would be where the doors are. So you put the building number up on, or the address number up on top of the building. It makes it easier for emergency response. They've got the address, and then the unit number is followed by that where the actual entrance is. Again, common sense stuff. And then another one that came up, as we're getting all these nice new subdivisions, we were having questions regarding kiosks, mail kiosks. And they wanted to put them out by the road where people are just stopping in the middle of the road to go get their mail. Or they were putting them in the clubhouse, but they were just out in the open. So we actually looked at, Gene did a really good job on this one. We've got 7 items that actually outline the design of the kiosk. It needs to be fairly compatible with the design of the subdivision itself. We also require a cover over it. That way, when you do stop and park and go to your mailbox, you aren't going to get wet if it's raining. You can take your time, you can look at your mail, and then put the key back in, close it up, and then run to your car and hopefully you don't step in a puddle. But we also took into account the mail service themselves because they are going behind usually to put the mail in the slots. They don't open each individual door, they open up the master panel in the back. So we're requiring covers over that also, and sidewalk, so that you don't step in the mud or the dirt when you're getting your mail or when they're delivering the mail. Again, it's one of those kind of common sense type things. Another one that we did in the Land Development Code, the majority of the residential subdivisions, we talk about what's called a build-to line. I know I described that one time, I think it was when we were first adopting the Land Development Code, and we were having some questions, so instead of having to describe it every time, we put an actual definition in, which I believe is going to end up helping. Basically, it says the front setback line of a principal building shall be equal to or average of the existing neighboring structures on a specific block. The build-to line is intended to create an even building facade line along the street. So we've got a lot of vacant lots, and this is primarily in the downtown area, but we've got some homes that are 10 feet from the sidewalk. We've got other ones that are 30, 40 feet back. So depending on where you are, it might be an average of those, or it might be, there might be some that are all 20 foot and we don't want a house going 5 feet from the sidewalk. Or if they're all 5 feet from the sidewalk, then that could be 5 feet from the sidewalk. So basically it's trying to keep that line of sight open so that you aren't looking into your neighbor's window because you built back from the build-to line. In the Kelly Park interchange area, we did increase the village center. That's the primary, the red spot on the map. We did increase the block length from 300 to 400 feet. And we also, instead of saying new blocks shall not exceed the maximum lineal foot perimeter, we said length because the perimeter is around. 300 feet around a block is really short. So we did the 400 feet length. And then if there is a break in the block, it was not specified as to how wide that break should be. So we did put in 25 feet wide for a break. That's basically about a paved street width, but usually that's where they can put trails and sidewalks and walking ways between blocks or between buildings. And the last one that we've got is the density, intensity, and open space for the village center, the employment district, and the interchange, and then we also added in the med tech district for the floor area ratio. We dropped the floor area ratio for the village center to 0.15. And we got rid of the average and the balance and the maximum and the average. It was just too much to have to worry about. If you have a floor area ratio, it's a lot easier to say, here's your floor area ratio, you hit it, don't worry about it. And then under the employment, the maximum floor area ratio went from 0.5 to 2.0. And that's because some of the uses that we were coming in they were a lot more intense. And that's actually what we're looking for, especially for employment, is we want those buildings to be able to be there so we can get more people working. Hence, we get rid of the term of bedroom community for Apopka. We're past that now. And then for density, we originally had a minimum dwelling unit per acre of 4. And for an employment district, we really don't care if people are living on that property. If the hospital, they bought 52 acres up on the north side of Kelly Park off of Effie Drive. I don't want the residents on the hospital. I want them on the properties around it. And then same with the storage warehousing. It's that type of thing. You don't want to mix the residential and the storage or residential and the hospital. There's enough other property around that they can get those units. So we dropped that to 0 as a minimum, maximum 7.5. Same thing with the interchange district. The interchange is supposed to be for commerce. So we dropped that to 0 also, maximum of 10 if they wanted it. And then med tech, we also have that as 0. That's where the hospital would go, or the doctor's, lawyer's office, things like that. Not lawyers. That would be minimum of 0, maximum of 10. Basically, we reflected what we had for the interchange. So we actually have some regulations in there for the med tech. And then, just like I mentioned, there's a couple spots that we put in the correction for what it might be linking to, where you have to go for a code for a certain section. If you're looking at walls or fences, we want to make sure they get to the right section number instead of the wrong section number. And that's it in a nutshell. I didn't know if you had a chance to go through a lot of these, but if you have any general or specific questions, let me know.
Thank you, Mr. Hitt. Does the board have any questions?
Yes,
Commissioner
Jim,
Washington.
just clarify for me. You were talking about there's going to be I might get this wrong, an exemption to install a fence if you have a big building up to 15 feet.
That's a wall,
Excuse me?
for a wall.
A wall,
Yeah.
not a fence.
Yep. There's, well, it's got it for the non-residential sections. Let me find it real quick. Okay, here it is. Yeah, this is under fences and walls, and basically it states, let me make sure what district it is. Walls taller than 6 feet may be approved by the DRC, Development Review Committee, as part of a development plan, provided the wall is, 1, internal, does not face or is viewed by an adjacent property or adjacent right-of-way, has significant landscape screening, and does not exceed 15 feet in height, is poured in place or tilt wall, and meet all engineering specifications for the city engineer. What happened with Winn-Dixie is because it was higher than 6 feet. 6 feet is, it's basically a segmented block wall. Different requirements for that, so they don't have to worry about washing out because of all the rainwater. When they go higher than 6 feet, what we're doing is saying it's a poured-in-place wall, so that it's a solid wall that's being still tied back. It has a base area. In fact, is before they buried the base for the wall back behind where Winn-Dixie is going in, there was an area that was probably poured, gosh, I want to say it was at least 5 or 6 feet on both sides of that wall. So it's anchored in there, and then they also have tiebacks that went into the property to the west. So that wall is probably more solid than any I mean, I wouldn't worry about having it wash out, but that's the main thing is the requirements for that.
Thanks.
Sure.
Any more questions from the board?
Yeah, I have a
Commissioner
question.
Ryan?
The alleyways you're talking about, 18-foot alleyways, I assume that's just one-way traffic, that's not two-way
Correct.
traffic?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, and they've got to put the arrow on it, and there'll be, like one-way arrows at
Is
each
there a
end.
problem enforcing one-way traffic?
Pardon?
Is there a problem enforcing one-way traffic in these alleyways?
Haven't had anybody that's really complained yet. More than likely, if I was probably like 2 doors in from the end, I'd probably whip in myself.
That's what I'm thinking, yeah.
But that's an HOA thing, and they kind of know what they're buying.
Okay.
I got a question.
Good question, though. That was good.
Was there any thought given to increasing the open space requirements, making it more in sync with Orange County as a whole?
We have not had any requests from planning or city council to change our open space requirements.
Okay, well, I hope that's something we look at in the future. I think one of our greatest assets here in Apopka is our natural features, and I'd hate to walk out this building and see building after building as far as the eye could see without a tree in sight.
Well, we've had the current open space standards for the last 30 years that I know of, and so far it's turned out okay.
Any more questions? All right, thank you, Mr. Hitt.
Thank you.
I do have one question.
Yeah.
The build to line, that applies to all residential properties?
It's primarily designed for the downtown area. That's where the mixed use downtown. That's where it's mentioned is in
But
the.
that wouldn't apply to a 5-acre lot in the rural district?
No,
All right.
no.
Okay.
Because
Thank
it's usually the same block. So.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right, thank you, Mr. Hitt.
Sure.
Bring it back to the board for discussion or a motion.
Public comment.
Oh, I'm sorry, you're right. Public comment. Is there anyone here who would like to comment on Mr. Hitt's detailed explanation of the glitch amendment? I didn't think so. All right, bring it back to the board for discussion or a motion, please.
I'll make a motion, Mr. Chairman, to approve the amendment to the Land Development Code and forward to the Apopka City Council for consideration.
Thank you, Commissioner Stanley. Motion by Commissioner Stanley. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Commissioner Ryan. Thank you, Commissioner Ryan. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Item number 2, comprehensive plan, small-scale future land use amendment. Location is 1450 and 1520 West Kelly Park Road. Owners Rafael Enrique Citero Alicia. Applicants Stephan Barros Engineering, care of Carlos Barros. Project manager is Mrs. Jean Sanchez. Ms. Sanchez.
Jean Sanchez with the Community Development Department. This is a request to recommend approval of the future land use designation of 1450 and 1520 West Kelly Park Road from residential estates, allowing a maximum of 1 dwelling unit per acre to very low density suburban residential, which allows up to 2 dwelling units per acre. The properties are located at 1450 and 1520 West Kelly Park Road, south of Kelly Park Road and west of Kelly Park Hills subdivision in the county. The area of the properties shows residential uses and ag facilities in the vicinity. Just existing future land use. The proposed future land use designation of very low density suburban is compatible with the area because properties in the vicinity have the same future land use designation. It is also compatible with the requirement in Policy 3.5 of the city's comprehensive plan that properties north of Pumpkin Road and west of Rock Springs Road are restricted to no more than 2 dwelling units per acre. This application is also being processed simultaneously with the rezoning application, which is the preceding item on the agenda. The DRC recommends approval. The recommended motion is to recommend approval of the proposed change in future land use. Staff and applicant are available for questions.
Thank you, Ms. Sanchez. Anyone have questions of staff? Seeing none, does the applicant have a presentation? You're available for questions? Okay, does anyone have questions of the applicant? All right, thank you. Does anyone from the public here wish to speak on this issue? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board for discussion or a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we find the proposed change in future land use from residential estates to very low-density suburban residential consistent with the comprehensive plan and land development code and compatible with the character of the surrounding areas, recommending approval of the future land use amendment based on the findings and facts presented in the staff report. and
Thank you, Commissioner
exhibits.
Rondo. Motion by Commissioner Rondo. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Washington. Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, item number 3, same piece of property, change of zoning, 1450 and 1520 West Kelly Park Road. Owners Rafael Enrique Sestero Alicia. Applicants Stephen Barros Engineering, care of Carlos Barros. Project manager, Mrs. Jean Sanchez.
For the record, Jean Sanchez with the Community Development Department. This is a request to recommend approval of the change of zoning for 1450 and 1520 West Kelly Park Road from T transitional to RSF 1A Residential Single Family State Zoning District. This is the companion item for the previous future land use amendment request. The RSF 1A zoning district that the applicant is proposing is compatible with the future land use designation of very low suburban and is also compatible with the area. The DRC recommends approval. The recommended motion is to recommend approval of the change of zoning from T transitional to RSF 1A zoning district. Staff and applicant are available for questions.
Thank you, Ms. Sanchez. Does anyone have questions of staff?
Yeah, I have
Commissioner Ryan.
one quick question. Will there be sidewalks on the Kelly Park Road in front of the subdivision?
For this, there's no proposed subdivision for this right now, sir. This is just a zoning
I'm
request.
sorry?
This is the zoning request. There's no
Right.
development plan.
Right. You're correct.
Right.
Will there be sidewalks? Is there going to be required sidewalks?
We
for that
require
subdivision?
sidewalks for development plans when they come in general.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Any further questions of staff? Any questions of the applicant? Does anyone here from the public wish to speak on this matter? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board for discussion or a motion.
I can do this one, Mr. Chairman. I'll create the motion. I move to find the proposed change in zoning from transitional to RSF-1A consistent with the comprehensive plan and land development code and compatible with the character of the surrounding areas, recommending approval of the proposed change of zoning based on the findings and facts presented in the staff reports and exhibits.
Thank you. Motion by Commissioner Dumey. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Stanley. Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 4, comprehensive plan, small scale future land use amendment. MA Board Street, owner City of Apopka, applicant City of Apopka. Location is southeast corner of South Hawthorne Avenue and MA Board Street. Mrs. Sanchez.
Again, Jean Sanchez with the Planning and Zoning Division. This is a request to recommend approval of the future land use amendment of the city's property on MA Board from low-density residential with a maximum of 5 dwelling units per acre to low-medium density residential permitting up to 7.5 units per acre. The property is located on the southeast corner of Hawthorne Avenue and MA Board Street, approximately 1.09 acres in size. The area of the property shows residential uses on the east and the south, Alonzo Williams Park on the north, and office and storage uses on the west. The proposed future land use designation of low-medium density will allow the density increase needed to support the development of 7 single-family homes on the subject property. The future land use designation is also compatible with the neighborhood as the properties to the southwest and northeast already carry a low-medium density future land use designation. The DRC recommends approval. The proposed recommendation is to recommend approval of the future land use change. Staff, well, the city of Apopka is available for questions.
Does anyone have any questions of the staff / applicant?
Yeah, I got a question.
Commissioner Dumey?
So, Ms. Sanchez, you said the city's planning on putting 7 homes on this property?
The city is not, sir. It will be a different applicant for the development of the subdivision.
Okay, so the city's gonna sell this property and somebody else
Correct.
could develop it. Do they have any idea, are these gonna be low-income housing, or do we know yet?
This will be affordable housing. We're working with the Ministerial Alliance with this property.
Oh, okay, great, thanks.
Anyone else have questions?
Yeah, that narrow strip of land that's on the south part of the property, what could that be used for?
Right now, it's about a 20, I think it's a 20 or 25-foot access way.
Will it be an access way?
No,
No.
if anything, for sidewalk or for, access coming out to 7th Street. But it's not planned because it's minimal. It couldn't even be used for really a driveway.
So what will be there when these houses are developed there?
Nothing on that little strip.
little
Right,
strip?
right now, it looks like we got 3 homes. We saw some different designs. It'll be 3 homes that'll be facing Hawthorne.
Right.
And then there'll be another driveway right along the eastern boundary. And then, so the homes will face that eastern boundary. There'll be 4 going along there, going into that southern parcel. So that last parcel will have, they're going to combine those, both parcels. And then, so there'll be 4 homes along there. So the backyards will face each other like a normal subdivision.
Right, right. Will they
So
have
we'll get-
access to 7th Avenue on that strip?
That property owner could probably go out there if they wanted to, but
I'm just curious.
it'll be
Thank
up to
you.
them. Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any more questions? Does anyone from the public wish to speak on this matter? Sir, name and address for the record, please.
Yes, Sylvester Smith. Sylvester Smith, 226 MA Board Street. Okay, first of all, there's been only 2 homes on that block of MA Board Street since the 60s. That land has been inquired about being purchased for years, and we were always told that it would be a parking lot for the park, and that's it. And we're befuddled here about how the city engaged with the Ministerial Alliance as far as them to purchase that property. And we don't know whether it was offered to the public or anyone else to purchase it. Was it donated or anything like that? Also, that easeway or whatever that he's talking about, that goes to my backyard. That comes across, that goes west out to Hawthorne. And talking about putting 7 homes on that small piece of property, okay, I've been here all my life, and it's not gonna be nothing but another ghetto. There's gonna be shooting, there's gonna be drugs, and the same thing. All right, it's already bad enough that they put the Dean Center there. There are parking lots that are too short, cars are hanging in the road. And now you're talking about putting possibly sidewalks up and down there. You're gonna take 5 feet of my yard, and I'm just not happy with it, and my family's not happy with it. So I'm not satisfied with that whatsoever. And neither is my mother, and neither is any of our family. And we grew up there. We built the park across the street with Mr. Jimmy Baker with our hands. Okay, so we know this land. We know a lot of new people come here to the city of Apopka, and they make decisions on things, names on things, and all of that stuff because they don't know the history of Apopka, and especially on that side of town. It's not South Apopka, but it might as well be South Apopka because as soon as you come across the streets, you're in a whole different area. So we've been dealing with this for years, or these type things for years. My grandfather's been dealing with these type things for years, way back since the 70s. My grandfather is Mr. John H. Bridges. And like I said, we've been there since that house was built in '69, and before that, we had a house there sitting on bricks.
Mr. Head, it seems like the density is much denser than the surrounding area. Is that true?
Well, if you look at the properties along 7th Street, on both sides of 7th Street, this is actually meeting the code. The lots are a minimum of 50 feet each. There'll be 3, as I mentioned, facing Board Street, so there'll only be 2 about the
These
same
lots are a
width
lot
as the
deeper.
neighboring facing MA Board.
The lots on 7th Street are a lot deeper, a lot more depth.
They're deeper, they're shallow, they're what we would call shotgun lots.
And that's the thing, I'm tired of seeing shotgun lots. I grew up with shotgun lots. That's all you see over there in South Apopka.
Yep.
And we're tired of shotgun lots, because it brings the same old thing. We're gonna get the same thing, and mark my word, if it goes through, you guys are gonna be hearing about it in a year or 2. And it's gonna be the same old thing. And it's right there at our door. And we're gonna have homes facing the side of our yard and our backyard, no privacy, no nothing. Somebody's driveway will be right there at the edge of our backyard and outside of our yard. And like I said, we've been there, only 2 homes have been there. That home and the home to the east of that, well, Mr. Will King. And that's vacant. It's been vacant for the last 2 or 3 years or longer.
What do you
All right,
think?
thank you,
that-
sir.
I'm sorry. Okay. What do you think the city of Apopka should do with that property?
For now, as far as I'm concerned, they can leave it as a parking lot or make it a parking lot, because just like he said, that's a safety hazard out there right now, to be honest. It's just a field with, it's just a
Nothing,
field.
Yeah, dirt.
So it's just a dirt field. Well, it's grass there, but, you know, again, our concern is, like I said, we've been here all our lives, and we know what it's gonna turn into. So I don't know how many of you guys have been on that side of town or that side of the tracks or whatever, but that's exactly what it's gonna turn into. And, you know, we don't want it to happen.
All right, thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
I have a question. Stand up, sir. So I think I heard you say that you feel that there are others who had an interest in developing that property.
Yeah, my whole family, for years.
Okay, for years, right? So, and then all of a sudden now we have this situation and you're unhappy. I understand that. If you had an opportunity to buy that property, what would you do with it?
I would put 3 homes on it,
3 homes.
yes.
So, I'm not gonna put words in your mouth, but it sounds like 3 homes are better than 7 homes.
Most definitely.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Does anyone else from the public here wish to speak on this matter? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board for a discussion or a motion.
So, Mr. Chairman, I got a comment. Mr. Sylvester, thanks for coming tonight. Question for you, though. So I'm looking at this map here. You said you live on 7th Street, so you're just south.
MA Board Street, just to the, directly on the east
Mr.
side.
Sylvester, could you come back to the podium, please?
I'm trying to understand which property yours is, because I'm looking at the map as yours. Are you,
Jim, can you switch to the map on the main screen?
His mom has the property, it's directly to the east, on
okay, so
right
you're
off
to
of
the
MA
east,
Board Street.
right across from the Billy Dean Center then?
Yes.
Okay, so you're to the east. Okay.
The reason the city's pursuing this, the land use, is we've got direction from city council to work with the ministerial alliance regarding the property to get it ready for potential homes.
Did the city get any comments from the folks along 7th Street that would be affected by this?
No.
So what we are looking at here is just a future land use amendment.
Correct.
That's all, it has nothing to do with who takes ownership of the property.
Correct.
That's a different issue. Just for you to know. That this is just for changing the land use of that property. Okay? As
Okay.
opposed to if the city, I don't know if the city has a written agreement with the South Apopka Ministerial Council or not. They don't. So there you go. So once if this is approved, you can do what you need to do in order to, get your irons in a fire, so to speak.
Okay, it's
follow me?
understood, yeah. No, I understand exactly what it is.
Okay.
So, I mean, it's a concern when you come, you got flags outside your gate inside 5 feet of your land, and get ready to be taken away also.
No, I
So,
understand that.
You know, it's it's disturbing to us.
And I can understand that.
Okay.
Does anyone else have questions of the speaker? All right, thank you, Mr. Slusser. All right, back to the board for discussion or motion.
So, Mr. Head, one more question. So you're trying to change the density of that property?
Correct.
You're lowering the density, you're raising the density?
Raising the density from low 5 units per
making it
acre
more
to
dense.
7.5.
I'm sorry, say again?
We're changing the density, we're recommending changing the density from 5 dwelling units per acre to 7.5 dwelling units per acre.
I have a problem with that. I think
And there's about an acre of property there, so it basically rounds down to 7.
My opinion is I don't think we should change the density considering that neighborhood.
If you look at the next block down, it's about the same distance as all 7.5 also.
They look bigger to me, I don't know. Even though they are narrow and very long.
Yeah,
Especially the one on his street.
yeah, an MA board, they are wider there. But
Yeah.
like I mentioned, the way the plan was set up, it has 2 homes, so they're both about the same, they're both about the same width coming down, they're sideways going like this. There's 2, 4, 6,
Right, I
and then the
saw that.
7th one. So basically what you'll see from MA board is about the same size width lot as what they are to the east.
But my opinion is I don't think we should change the density.
You know, I would, to your comment, Commissioner Ryan, I'm a little troubled by this. Just simply, I'd feel better if we were changing the density if there was a written agreement with the Ministerial Alliance.
Well, that should not be part of this discussion.
Right, but the thing is, if we do this, then we don't have any say in what happens in the future.
We do have a say
No, we
because the city
absolutely
still
have.
owns
We
the
come-
property.
It comes back to us at the next step. I understand
3
that.
times.
But this is the first step. And what we're hearing tonight is that adjacent landowners coming here saying that he hasn't been included in the process. That's what I'm hearing, to review this. And it
Notice was
concerns-
Okay.
sent out appropriately for this meeting, for
I'm sorry,
this item.
Say again, I didn't hear.
Public hearing notices were sent out
For this meeting.
Yes.
based
So
on
he's
code,
here.
based on code requirements, correct?
Okay. We have another member of the public that would like to speak on this matter, so we'll bring it back to that.
Good evening. My name is Rod Love, resident of the city of Apopka. Just wanted to give some background to this. We engaged the city over 8 years ago. We actually stimulated the city to actually enact the legislative inventory of surplus property within the city. One of the things that prompt this, and some of you may be familiar, when we had a number of killings in Apopka, this goes back 6 years or so. I sat on the task force. The community was engaged with the task force. There's a task force recommendation that's well publicized out there. Some of the recommendations address housing. Some of the recommendations address job training, youth prevention programs. It's a litany of recommendations that came from that task force, and this goes back 8 years. The city council then was engaged regarding surplus property and building affordable housing. It was discussed before a public forum with the city commissioners and the mayor at the time, as well as the sitting mayor and the city commissioners. This was engagement to address affordable housing. Yes, that property has been considered for a number of issues and a parking lot. Some of the things that has been, I guess, evaluated or risk versus rewards is the consideration of an expansive parking lot versus affordable housing. I'm here today, we partnered with the Ministerial Alliance to purchase and develop that property. This has come before the city council a number of times. It's in the record as it relates to the entire inventory of city property that luxury developers have had no interest in over the past 40 years. So that property does not and has not contributed to the tax rolls. I'm being conservative over approximately maybe 20 years, if not more. Open discussion, we're definitely open to discussion, but a lot of consideration has gone into the high demand and need for affordable housing. And I apologize that, Mr. Smith and I have not had the opportunity to converse. But what our objective has been is to respond to a need, and that need is affordable housing. I was listening to Mr. Smith, and I can understand his concerns. I am definitely open to discussions. But I also heard him mention, when you asked the question, what would he put there? And it would be 3 homes versus 7 homes. So there's definitely a need to address affordable housing. And some of the things that we considered was the platting of the land. We've considered economics of the land and the development to build homes that are going to be affordable. And as everybody knows, in the environment that we're in right now, it's tough. But again, wanted to come up here and speak to it because this is not something that started yesterday. This started well over 8 years ago, and it's in the record. It's, so we've had this discussion. I just wanted to come and put a little meat on the bones, if you would.
Okay, Mr. Love. It's a great thing when you have conversation with people. You think there's an obstacle, then after you start talking, and then you find middle ground, and all of a sudden you got a solution. So here we're looking at 7 homes. Mr. Smith says he doesn't like 7 homes. He would put in 3 homes. But it sounds like there's room for negotiation between whoever buys that property and find middle ground. We absolutely need affordable housing in Apopka. It's like squeezing blood out of a turnip.
You're right.
You're
right.
We got to do it.
You're right.
So it's not like no, it's like how. So, and I hear what you're saying, that the ministerial council and yourself have been talking to Apopka about city-owned property for the longest time and how to use it. That's great. So if you're the ministerial council, are they open to working with Mr. Smith in terms of the density of the homes and that?
I'm sure they would be open to having a conversation. I mean, again, this has been discussed, and a lot of the issues, the reason why we reached the number of 7 homes, looking at how many homes can sit on that plat. I'm not a developer, so I can't tell you all the things that was taken into consideration, but a lot of the issues as it relates to platting and architecture and drain, it has gotten expensive before even the slightest dirt has ever been moved. And there's some yet still challenges, but I can assure you, and again, I gotta apologize to, Mr. Smith. This conversation should have taken place a long time ago, but I'm sure the Ministerial Alliance will be open to definitely having that conversation. And before I leave, one of the things that, that's been discussed multiple times regarding the parking lot, Mr. Smith is absolutely correct when he speaks about some of the elements that we're trying to address, some of the elements that was addressed in the task force report. One of the considerations, if that property became a parking lot, was the consideration of another hazard of it becoming a hangout, and the things that come along with that. So I'm sure the Alliance would definitely be open, and Mr. Smith, I apologize to you for not having the conversation that we should have had.
Another question, would you be looking for government funding to make it affordable housing?
We've explored, and again, this goes back 8 years. We entertained and sat down with Orange County, which at the time had first-time home buyer funds. I mean, a lot of the opportunities over the past 8-9 years have come and gone, and we're still looking at more opportunities. We've been engaged regarding some of the first-time home buyer funding, but timing is everything.
Okay, what about multifamily buildings?
Not allowed there.
Multi-story, what,
Not allowed there.
excuse me?
Not allowed there. Single family only.
Okay, all right. I retract that.
And by the way, the city did buy this from Homes in Partnership about 23 years ago.
Okay.
This sounds like a project for HUD, but the problem is the city of Apopka doesn't deal directly with HUD. You have to go through Orange County to deal with HUD, correct? Why can't we start dealing with HUD directly now? This would be a
We-
good project to start.
It's certain agreements that between certain funding mechanisms are coming from the federal to the state, to the county, to the city. Right now, the county holds the purse strings for all the SHIP funds that are available for single-family homes.
That's
They
correct,
do,
because
they
we're not
they do a
dealing
good
direct-
job with it.
Because we're not dealing directly with HUD, which we should, since we're over 50,000 now. We should be able to be dealing directly with
We
HUD.
probably have to hire
An
about,
economic director, I'm thinking. That would work.
they typically don't deal directly with housing developments like this. But I get you,
We
yeah,
can make an exception.
yeah.
All righty. Thank you, Mr. Love. Any more questions? Any further discussion? All right, bring it back to the board for a motion.
I make a motion to deny. That's
Do you
what I
have
had to say.
Read the motion.
I make a motion to deny. Do we have a second? Do we have-
Okay. You have to, I find the proposed motion not, Sonny, for the record.
Doesn't
Saying,
doesn't say that on there. Not.
not consistent with the comprehensive plan and land development code.
Yes, I find it not consistent with comprehensive plan and land development code
All right,
and non-compatible with the character of the surrounding area.
perfect. All right, motion by Commissioner Ryan. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Rendo. Any discussion?
Yes, it's just the hangup here is that we're looking at the 7 single-family homes is the hangup.
Well, we're staying at 5.
Okay,
Original 5.
so if we reject it, then we're staying with 5, is that correct?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay.
Five,
Good.
five at the max, right?
5 is the max, correct.
Correct. And this is to go over by 2 points. I do have, while we're discussing, Mr. Hitt, the properties that are, can you put the map back, please, Gene? If I'm not mistaken, I drove by and looked at it, but I wasn't 100% sure, but that is directly next to the park, is it not?
Across the street.
Directly across the street.
Okay. So I know at that park, and in reference to Mr. Smith, I spent 10 years coaching on that field, so I'm very aware of that area. Right directly behind, we're talking about density, directly behind the ball field, which is kind of catty corner to this property, there's 2 parcels there, the 2 smaller parcels. Both of them have duplexes on it, and if I'm not mistaken, the one directly behind the ball field on that borders M.A. Board Street has like 4 or 6 units on it, and it's not a quarter acre. They're duplexes or little apartments there. See the houses, if you look directly behind the clubhouse, look at that. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 buildings. And I know each building has 2 dwelling units in it.
Correct. It's very dense there.
Excuse me?
It's very dense there.
Correct. So we're not talking about something completely abnormal to the area. That's exactly, I don't know when those were built, but I know that there's, like I said, at least 6 dwelling units there, and that's not a quarter acre. But that's not descriptive in the plan. That was it. I just want to point that out. Okay, we have a motion. Do we have any more discussion? Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Washington. Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
I oppose.
I oppose also. Okay. So motion carries.
Clarify, I couldn't tell the number of, I couldn't tell, can we have a roll call vote on that?
Yeah, let's do a roll call.
Okay, Commissioner Doomy,
Nay.
Commissioner Rendo, Commissioner Ryan, You vote.
Which way is the nay?
You
And-
made a motion to deny.
Okay, I vote for it, whatever that is.
Okay.
We can't, we need to
Commissioner
hear it.
Norwood.
Gotta hear it.
Um,
It's-
so
it's-
let's-
so
let's go.
An aye vote is to deny, a nay vote is to not deny, is to not deny. And then it's,
Okay. So a yes vote means denial. So
Okay.
Correct.
You vote to deny, you vote to deny, you vote to approve.
No, I voted to
No,
deny, sir. I
we,
changed my vote.
can you each say it?
I just need a
versus-
vote. I just need to know who votes aye. Is this
All
in
right,
favor of the
let me
motion? Aye or nay on the vote, one by one, either an aye or a nay?
Yeah.
Okay. The motion is
To
to deny.
Deny,
Commissioner
recommendation of
Dewey, do you
denial.
vote in favor? Yes or no?
Yay. A.
In favor of denial.
Yes, in favor of denial.
In
Okay.
favor of
Commissioner
denial.
Norwood,
Sorry.
I was confused.
opposed.
Nay,
Commissioner Stanley,
nay.
opposed.
I oppose denial. I mean, I agree with denial.
Okay, agree with denial. I oppose the denial. Okay, so we
So-
have a
Motion passes 4-3.
4-3. Motion passes 4-3 for denial. All righty.
Oh, confusing.
All right, item number 5. This is a variance, so it's quasi judicial. So I will ask, has anybody from the board had any ex parte communication on this matter?
No.
No.
Okay. Variance to allow a fence height of 7'3" in lieu of 6 foot for 1035 Piedmont Oaks Drive. Owners Rita Taylor, applicant Rita Taylor, project manager Mrs. Jean Sanchez.
Jean Sanchez with the Planning and Zoning Division. The property is located at 1035 Piedmont Oaks Drive within the Oaks of Okaiva residential subdivision. The area of the property shows it's surrounded by residential lots. The applicant is requesting a variance from Land Development Code Section 5.5.5A, which restricts fences in residential zoning districts to 6 feet in the rear yard and side yards. The applicant has installed a wooden fence that is 7 feet and 3 inches in height. The fence was installed without a permit, which was reported to code enforcement. A code enforcement hearing was held on December 13, 2022, and the applicant was informed to explore the variance process for the fence height requirement. The code enforcement hearing officer has given the applicant until April 12, 2023 to cure the violation. Variance for fence to the approved height due to the applicant's assertion of an undesirable property on the east that is not part of the Oaks of Okaiva subdivision.
I'm sorry, you said not part of the Oaks?
Correct.
Right.
How is that not part of
To
the
the
Oaks of Okaiva
east is not part of the subdivision. It
Correct.
is just a
Okay,
regular
I got you.
infill.
I'm sorry, I misheard you.
No problem. Shown are photos of the fence and existing conditions on the applicant's adjacent property. So that's the neighboring property shown right there and the fence that was installed. The variance process requires that the planning commission make an initial determination on the basis of those 3 criteria outlined on your staff report. Also make another determination on whether or not a hardship exists based on the applicant's responses to the next set of variance criteria, which is also included in this packet. Based on the responses to the variance criteria, information submitted and collected by staff, and lack of physical surroundings, shape, topographical condition, other physical environmental conditions that are unique to this property. The Planning Division and Transportation Coordinator object to the request as no evidence of hardship exists. Other DRC members did not have any objections to the request. The Planning Commission decisions shall be one of the following: approval of the variance subject to modification and/or condition, or denial of the variance. Staff and applicant are available for questions.
Hang on, let me get a clarification. Okay, and can you clarify, what was the impetus of this code enforcement? What what prompted that? Can you go through that again?
As far as planning, was told that I think it's either a neighbor or someone in the subdivision reported this fence, and that's what,
Did you say the fence was permitted?
it's not permitted, no.
It was not permitted, okay. And there was a complaint from someone in the neighborhood?
Correct.
Okay, I understand, thank you. Okay, do you have a question?
Can you go back to the
Commissioner Ryan.
pictures?
Sure.
And identify the pictures like on the right side. I can't figure out what are we looking at there?
I can
This is
clarify
the
that.
pictures of the adjacent property that the applicant has asserted that she's shielding herself from, which is the reason to install the fence.
Wow.
Well, Commissioner Ryan, if I can clarify, the fence starts at a lower height, I believe, than 5 foot, and works its way up to that, and then across the back plane is the taller fence, the 7'3" fence. Is that not correct?
Correct. That's what I understand. It's stepped.
And the adjacent pictures are, there's a trailer, and then there's the stuff that you can see there in the picture, and I believe that's, I don't know if there's a commercial use out of that property or a business run out of that property.
It's residentially zoned. It's a residentially zoned property. There's also a residential structure on there.
Okay.
But that's unincorporated Orange County?
That
Or that's
is
No,
in the
that's
city.
It's a Apopka.
It's
It's in the city.
When I see this,
The back, no, the property behind it is.
Mhm. It's in the city.
It is?
Yes, sir.
Is there any code violations there? Yes,
Code enforcement's been informed.
Okay.
and they have done something about that, I assume.
I'm not sure where in the pipeline that is.
It
All right.
looks like it's been there for a long time.
It has, that property. And again, another question. The code violation was called in by a homeowner, and then my understanding is that the city code is that can't be more than 6 foot. That is correct.
That's right. Yes,
Okay,
sir.
but that was changed in 2019, correct?
correct.
Okay. Just as information and full disclosure, I live in that neighborhood.
Okay.
There's at least 4 other houses that border the trailer park on the west side that have 8-foot fences. And most all of them are against the back plane, specifically to shield from what's on the other side, the same thing that this person has here. And now, when they were built, I believe they were all probably built prior to that. So the code was changed in the interim, and it's affecting this person. The secondary thing that I would bring up about that is if there was a complaint, it would have to be, I would assume, from the person behind, because the people on the right and left side, there's really no effect other than a small raise in the fence in the middle section. So it seems to me that it's, a code violation is a little over the top here for something that doesn't, I don't see how this is damaging in any way to the neighborhood. And the fact that there's other houses in the neighborhood that have the exact same thing set up on the back of their house, but because they were done before 2019 in a subdivision that was built in the late 80s. And I also know that the homeowners association had approved them to put this fence up in that manner. And their rules are the same as City of Apopka as far as 6 foot. Now, I realize City of Apopka trumps the HOA, but the fact that the HOA approved it kind of negates the thing that it's a problem in the neighborhood. So I just wanted to point that out.
No, Mr. Chairman, you're saying the HOA approved what?
They approved that fence over and above the 6 foot. The HOA has a 6 foot rule, and this person applied to the HOA, and the HOA approved that fence in that manner up to 7'3".
So, Mr. Chairman, since you have knowledge of that, did they go, obviously, they didn't go get permits, so is it anchored properly for wind loads and so on and so
That I do
forth?
not know, but I'm sure the applicant's here, we can probably discuss that further. I just wanted to clarify and give my, and again, I'm not trying to chastise anybody, but it seems a little over the top that we're getting, that this person needs to get a variance on something that a few years ago was completely legal and really doesn't have any bearing on anybody around them except the person directly behind. So,
Let's approve it.
so, do we, is the applicant here? Would you like to speak? Thank you. Name and address for the record, although we know what it is.
Thank you. I'm Rita Taylor. I live at 1035 Piedmont Oaks Drive. A year ago, I did consult people within my neighborhood, and I'm glad that you mentioned the people that had those high fences in the back, because Jerry Hatley was the person I did go and speak to. He showed me his beautiful 8-foot fence and told me why he had it, and the people beside him, why they had theirs. I had never thought of having an 8-foot fence, but I did appreciate him telling me about the fact that they got a variance and it was okayed by the association. When I started, the important thing is when I started trying to replace my fence, I had a number of contractors, fence contractors, tell me I did not need to get a permit because I was replacing an existing fence and I lived in Orange County. So I did not go and apply for a permit. The only reason why I did apply for a permit was because 2 or 3 months after my fence was put up, a neighbor complained that I didn't get a permit. And then I was told the only way that I could keep my fence the way it was to apply for a variance, which I did. So now I'm here.
All right, thank you. Does anyone have questions of
I
the
have a
applicant?
question.
Commissioner
The
Washington.
neighbor that complained, is that neighbor on the same side of the street where you live?
The neighbor's right beside me.
Okay.
And you're
I'm
the-
sure she'll speak.
She's not on the back, she's on the next door. It's actually that fence side that's showing right there that graduates down.
Okay,
Okay, ma'am, if you'll wait, we'll allow you to come up and speak
Okay.
on the record.
just so I'm clear, that this person who's gonna talk, the lady to talk next is the one who complained.
Yes, that's what I was told by
Oh.
Chris.
Well, I don't
I
know
just
that she
wanna-
could speak to that.
Thank you, just wanna keep it clear.
All right.
Okay, is there anything else?
Any more
that-
questions, applicant? Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Okay, does anyone from the public here wish to speak on this matter? Please, name and address for the record, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Cheryl McLeod, and I Rita's next door neighbor.
Your
and I live
address, please.
1031 Piedmont Oaks
Thank
Drive,
you.
Apopka. Okay, the 4 pictures up here, the 2 that are on the right are the people that live behind Rita, where she has, I'm assuming is an 8-foot fence. I didn't measure it, it may be 7'3", I don't really know. The other 2 pictures, the top one on the left is the fence that is between my house and Rita's house. So it isn't, it's approximately, the tallest is approximately maybe 8 feet. Then it comes down to approximately, I suppose, 7, and the shorter of the 3 sections is a little bit less than 6 feet. The picture in front, her house is on the right, my house is on the left. I oppose this because it's probably really pretty in Rita's backyard. It's a nice fence. I wish I had that fence, but I know when it's time for me to replace my fence, in order for my backyard to look bright, I'm going to need to mirror that. I don't really want to upset my neighbors that are next door to me. In addition to that, I have an existing fence that's 6 feet along the back and 6 feet along the other property line. I just don't, and as far as this being approved by the HOA, this was approved by the HOA after she put the fence up. It wasn't prior approval.
Well, according to the vice president of the HOA told me that he did approve it.
Well,
Prior
maybe
to-
you should speak to, who did you speak to?
I'm sorry,
Who did you speak to?
to Fred
That told you-
Kidwell.
That who?
Fred Kidwell.
Fred Kidwell? Well, what I can tell you is I called when this was going up, and the current president of the HOA came to Rita's house to try and speak to her about this. I have a picture of approximately the same fence that's in the top left corner. It wasn't complete at that point in time. You know, the last thing I really want is to quarrel with my neighbor. I hate this. I don't like going outside and feeling like we can't talk to each other, but it is what it is. And I did call, I just felt like if I have to follow the rules, then she should have to follow the rules. If I have to get authorization from the HOA to put up a fence, then she should prior to that. And actually, I don't think that, if that fence hadn't been standing there, I truthfully don't think she'd have gotten approval. I feel bad. I don't want her to have to take it down because of the expense, but for myself, I would like it taken down. It's an eyesore. In my backyard, there's this fence on one side, excuse me, and then the rest is, so when the time comes, I either mirror this or my backyard continually looks strange to me.
Let me ask you a question.
Sure.
Is that okay?
Sure, absolutely.
Why do you feel you need to mirror her fence?
Well,
In terms
because,
of the height, why?
well, because I would like it to match what's on one side of I don't want one side of my fence, or one side of my backyard one way, and the back and the other property line another way. To me, it just looks bad. It just needs, that's a personal preference, I suppose.
Okay, so basically, excuse me a second. So basically, it's a height issue.
It's a height
That's
issue.
that's what bothers you.
That's what bothers me.
Okay. Commissioner Stanley?
So you want her to conform to what you want, but you don't want to help conform to what her issues are. And I understand neighborly things. I understand. She's got very good reasons, obviously, for what she did. She may have went about it the wrong way.
Well, here's
Okay,
the-
and she may have forgot a step or two, which it happens. And
It
that's
happens.
what we're discussing
You
now.
know,
And
and particularly if someone told her that she didn't need to have it. The thing of it is what she's hiding is what's behind her, not what's beside her. And this 3-tier fence is on my side of, well, it's to the right of her house.
Right.
So it's in common with my backyard property line. So it may not seem offensive to you, but
Okay, so now that you keep on talking, it's starting to sound like the real issue is the fence along the rear boundary line. as opposed-
no. If maybe I misspoke to make you misunderstand, I have no problem with that. I agree with her. That's an eyesore back there. However, 6 feet covers it, but I have no problem with her having an 8-foot fence back there. Excuse me. My husband seems to think that I need to be in touch. Sorry about that. I have it on quiet except for my family. I didn't think he'd be calling. I apologize. No, it isn't the back fence. The back fence is where it's 8 feet, where these two houses, or these two pictures, where they exist. So that's the back.
So
And
basically,
it's
you just
8
want the 2 panels lowered.
I beg your
You
pardon?
just want the 2 side panels lowered.
The two side panels, yeah.
That's all.
Well, actually, it's one side panel, unless, I guess,
It
I
looked
don't
like
know.
two
The
to
lady
me.
on the other side must not have a problem with it. I didn't speak to her about it. I didn't want to get someone else involved in, something that was bothering me, and cause more issues. No, it's the side. This is a common line. Rita's house is here, my house is here. Between those houses is where this fence is.
What do you have on the other side of the yard?
On the other side of
Yeah,
what yard?
on your yard.
My yard,
Yeah.
a 6-foot fence.
Is that your fence?
I beg your pardon?
Is it your fence or your neighbor's fence?
It's my fence.
And you don't have any pictures of it for us to look at,
Of the 6-foot fence?
of your fence, yeah,
I beg your pardon?
of your fence, correct.
Of my fence? No, but you can see where her gate is on the bottom left. You can see where her gate is and where my fence is. That's not,
So, Ms. Taylor, a question for you.
Well, hang on, she has to come back to the podium if you want to have it.
I'll get to her when she comes.
Hang on. Okay, does anyone else have any questions?
All right, so thank you for
Oh,
continuing,
sure.
hold on, don't sit down. Thank you for continuing to provide information, but now, so it sounds like now, the rear fence that blocks the property that has all the construction equipment, that's one thing. But if Rita could lower the height of the fence between your property and her property to 6 feet, I want to put words in your mouth. Is that what you're looking for?
I would like that, yes. Yes.
Anyone else have questions of?
No, but I do have a comment later.
Okay, we'll get to that. All right, and I do have a question. Okay, so for clarification, it's the fence, you said earlier that the fence, is attractive and you're fine with the fence, but you
I'm
don't
sorry, I'm
like
having
the
a hard
fact
time hearing you.
that the fence is different than the opposite side. The fence that she put up is different than the opposite side. So for you to make your property monolithic in the back, you would have to do a graded fence also.
Right, and then, then my neighbors on that side, they don't like that idea either. So it's like,
Okay.
it's just a domino effect. It just goes on and
Do you have a fence on that side of your property?
I have a fence, yes. We actually took down the fence that was on the property line when Rita was putting this up, not really realizing at all that she was putting this up. She had actually shown me a picture of this, or at least a similar picture of this fence. And I said, Rita, that is really nice, but will the HOA approve it? She told me she was just putting it up. She didn't ask. So, talk to Jerry Hatley if you wish, but, then, I talked to him also.
Jerry's not the president there
He
currently.
is no longer the president,
Okay.
you're
And
correct.
so that fence is, the only way to make it look correct, and obviously that was, I guess, the design was to step the fence up from the 6 foot at the front, where it's actually, looks like it's the same height as your fence, step it up gradually to the back to make the 8 foot across the back. And it
Well,
begs the question, you said you don't like the fact that it doesn't match the other side. Okay, well, if she got approved for a plastic white fence there and you had wood on the other side, is that the same problem?
That'd be the same problem.
Okay, well, then what would be the recourse at that point?
If it was 6 feet, I would have no issue because I could put up a 6-foot wooden fence. And the thing of it is actually, I wonder when the time comes and I want to put up a fence, if I decided to mirror that, am I going to be able to even get a permit without coming like this and asking for a variance?
Well, but logically, why would you need to put that fence up on that side? Because it's already there and the proper side of the fence, the attractive side of the fence is facing you, actually. So it'd just be a
No,
gate across
I'm
the
talking about
front,
the other side,
on the opposite side.
opposite, in my backyard. This is one side of my backyard.
Yes, you have to get a variance to do the opposite side to match that.
Here's the thing, I don't really want this. My husband is livid that he even have to think about that.
Well, I'm
But
sure
that's either
Mrs.
here nor there.
Rita doesn't want to be here getting a variance either, so, okay. All right.
I beg your pardon?
I'm sure she doesn't want to be here getting a variance,
I'm
so,
sure, but you know what? She should have asked about it to begin with.
okay. All right, thank you very much. All right. Anyone else from the public wish to speak on this matter? Sir, your name and address for the record, please.
Yeah, I'm a friend of Rita's, and I came because I've kind of seen this thing develop a little bit. And in her backyard, I just wanted to point out that when you go outside in Rita's backyard and you look to the left to this lady's property, they've also built a big shed there. And they have, I've noticed on several occasions, they've got heavy equipment back there. They've got backhoes.
Are you talking about my property?
No. The people on the other side.
The
of
rear,
fence.
the rear of the
Yeah,
property.
Where all the trash and stuff
Correct,
is.
the pictures on the right.
And so when Rita comes out there and looks at that, sometimes you see the top of a backhoe, they've got trailers back there, they've got all kinds of stuff, and it looks kind of catty corner across that corner. Rita has to look at that big shed that they built, and the thing is super high. You can see it even with her fence being at 7'3". So that's really an eyesore. And when you go across from the back of the fence down the property line between their properties, you can still see that shed as high as her fence is right now. And that's why I don't understand why they're upset about that, because what it's basically done is block off whatever permit that guy has or whatever his land usage is. He's basically using it for a commercial property. And there's a lot of noise.
Ma'am, sorry, you had your chance to speak. Please let him speak.
Yeah, there's a lot of noise when he brings the equipment in and out of there. And the fence that Rita's put up now has helped block all that noise from that whole side. So, it just seems a good reason and common sense that, if you did want to build a fence, I would want to build it higher. I'm a contractor. I would want to build it higher too, to block that out and also block out the noise in the big shed where you can see it. So I just wanted to point that out because it's hard. You can't really see that from these pictures as you look across at more of an angle. You see all that, and it's just terrible for Rita's backyard. I mean, if you lower that fence down on that side, you're still going to see the shed. You're going to hear the noise factor is going to be much higher, and it's just terrible for her property. And I would think if you build a fence and you build it higher, it would improve your property value too, because anybody that comes in to buy your house and they look across and see all that trash and the heavy equipment and the shed, it's going to be a very negative factor for you.
Sir, ma'am, you need to address the board with your statement, not have a discussion.
Sorry, I'm sorry. I was just trying to be polite.
I understand.
But and that's Rita's problem. And like you say, when they said it was okay for the board to do it, I mean, she didn't realize there was going to be a problem with the neighbor. So, I mean, my thing would be, if she ever builds a fence, she should build it a little bit higher and get a variance and get it done properly. And that way it would improve her property also. And I don't see where she understands that just because on one side of her house, the fence is a little bit higher, while the other side of her house, because there's only a little over a foot difference. And actually, and when you look and you see that picture, when it comes where the gates are, Rita's fence is not very much higher than the neighbor's fence, so.
Okay. Again, ma'am, please.
So, just common sense and logic would say that, that would be the right thing to do. So I just wanted to see that because I've seen the whole thing develop from start to finish.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your comments. Okay. Anyone else from the public wish to speak on this matter?
I've got a question.
If not,
for
okay,
Ms. Taylor.
we'll bring it back to the board. Do you have
I got a question from Ms. Taylor.
Okay, Ms. Taylor?
Yeah. So is it 7'3"? Because I've heard 8 foot. Is it 7'3" everywhere?
Yes.
That's the highest point. The highest point of the fence,
Across
whether
the
it's on
rear,
the back or the-
7'3",
Okay.
yes, 7'3", and then I tried to graduate it down a
Okay.
foot on each.
And I saw, and it's
So
like this
there-
on all 3 sides? Is your other side of the house done like between you
The
and your
stepped
neighbor?
fence, yes, same.
Yes, both sides of my house are the graduated
Okay.
down.
Good enough.
Any more questions for the applicant?
I'm good.
Yeah, I do. I have a question.
Commissioner Washington?
How deep is your backyard? That is, from the rear wall of your house to the fence? How many feet?
Thank you.
18.3?
18.3 on the left side and on the right side. This is in your packet, by the way. It's 24 feet on the right side.
Okay, so how are you using that space? Do you have tables back there, barbecue pits, or just curious?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Not yet. It's going to though.
Okay,
That's what I'm trying to get to.
okay. Well, the only reason why I brought that up is that this commission has had to deal with a similar situation where neighbors were complaining about something. And the developer was amenable to putting in a blind that would solve the situation. The developer took the responsibility to deal with the complaint. Now, I'm just saying that to you. Not that you would want to do this, and I'm just throwing it out. That maybe you could, it's probably a bad idea, but I'm just saying it anyway. Maybe, reduce that fence down to 6 foot and then put in a hedge or something, if it's not against the rules of the HOA, and Mr. Cussler, you might know that. A hedge that would go high enough that would be equal to the fence that you have right now.
The
So
actual,
it's still a blind, it's just that it's not the fence.
the HOA limits the hedge to 6 foot, just like a fence.
Okay, so the HOA could make an exception.
Right.
Could-
And they
could not?
probably would, yes.
Okay, do you hear that? So your HOA, if you like the idea, maybe not, you could trim down the fence to 6 feet, then put in hedges that will grow up to 7 foot, 8 feet, and then you still, achieve your objective. That's the reason why I asked you how much space you had back there, because these bushes would take up some space.
Yeah, sorry, by the way, the rear, it's 20 feet.
Excuse me?
It's 20 feet, 20-foot setback,
Okay, I'm just throwing it out.
other than the screen room.
All right. Any more questions of the applicant? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Bring it back to board for discussion. Commissioner Lorendo, you have a comment.
Thank you. I want to point out the fact that I have pretty much a baseball diamond. That's my yard. The front of the house has, looks like iron. The right side going to the back corner is stockade. The left side going to the back corner is 2 different kinds of vinyl. Along the back is 164 feet of cream and white vinyl. We all get along. We absolutely love each other. And we meet, and nobody ever says anything about our fences. So to me, relationships are more important than fences. That's all I wanted to say.
Commissioner Hitt, can we get a code violation on the?
No, because it's up to code. I even on the 164, it's pinned at
Yeah,
164.
yeah, fortunately, we don't look at the material differences between them.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Lorendo. Anyone else have any comments? Okay, bring it back to the board for a motion.
I make a motion to approve the variance.
I'll second.
Motion by Commissioner Ryan. Thank you.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Doomy. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right. Yes, ma'am.
We'll make sure we let code enforcement know. too.
All right. No, ma'am.
No.
Yes, ma'am. You know what? I'm gonna call for a 5-minute recess before we move on. Bathroom break. call the meeting back to order. And we'll move on to item number 6. Variance. Oh, I'm sorry. Has anyone had ex parte communication on this matter?
No, sir.
Okay. Variance, allow a reduction in rear setback from 25 feet to 20 feet for 2424 Cedar Knoll Drive. Owners, John Armino.
Can you turn your mic on?
How about that? Applicant, John Armino. Location, Ms. Sanchez.
Jean Sanchez of the Planning and Zoning Division. This is a variance request to allow reduction in rear yard setback from 25 feet to 20 feet for the property at 2424 Cedar Knoll Drive. It's approximately 0.37 acre situated at Cedar Knoll Drive within the Wekiva Run subdivision. It's the area of the property. The subject property is currently within the RSF 1A residential single-family estate zoning district, in which the current rear yard setback is required to be 25 feet. The applicant is requesting a variance from Land Development Code Article 3, Section 3.3.4C, intensity and dimensional standards. They're requesting to decrease 5 feet of the required rear yard setback, reducing the setback requirement from 25 to 20 feet, and has recently informed staff that this is based on their intent to build an addition for his aging mother. Variance process requires planning the commission to make the initial determination based on these 3 criteria and make another determination on whether or not hardship exists based on the applicant's responses to these next set of criteria. The applicant was informed that a land development code amendment was being processed to allow a 20-foot setback for residential properties within the residential-based zoning districts, including the subdivision Wekiva Run. The LDC amendment is tentatively scheduled to be heard before Planning Commission today, which it was, and before City Council on March 1st, 2023 for the first reading, and March 25th, 2023 for second reading and adoption. The applicant, however, wished to proceed with this variance request. The police department has determined that approving this request is inconsistent with the intent of the current setback requirements. Planning Division and Transportation Coordinator have determined that based on the applicant's responses to the variance criteria, there's no hardship. Therefore, they object to the approval of this variance application. Other DRC members did not have any objections to the request. Staff and applicant are available for questions.
So when would the glitch amendment take effect if it passed on the March 15th?
It's adopted on March 25th. Oh, I'm sorry, 15th.
Same day as the.
Yep, the
Same
second,
day as the second reading and adoption is effective then? Okay.
correct.
Thank you.
All right, any more questions of staff? Okay, is the applicant here? Would they like to speak? Name and address for the record. If I hear you say it, then I can pronounce it correctly.
You did pretty good. John Armino, 2424 Cedar Knoll Drive. I'm sorry, this won't be as entertaining as the last variance, but I know it's going to be, the setback was 20 foot before, then it was 25 feet. I understand it's going back to 20 feet, so it's just trying to get a jump start on making the addition to the home before March, just building materials and just, anything to get, built sooner and my mother in there sooner.
Understood. All right, anyone have questions of the applicant?
Well, yeah, I do.
Commissioner Washington.
Sir, well, you do understand that the glitch amendments will be approved, hopefully, by the city
Yes.
sometime in March. So why are you asking for the variance now when it will not be an issue then?
We're just trying to get started sooner, just trying to get the building done sooner.
What's the application fee for variance?
I'm sorry?
What's the application fee for variance?
$600.
So it was worth $600.
Ouch.
Yeah, just trying to get things done sooner. Just trying to get things done sooner, that's all.
Okay.
So you pay $600 to put yourself into this position tonight.
Yes, sir.
Okay, Mr. Head, do you charge commercial businesses more for a variance than residential?
Yes.
You do, okay.
All right. Anyone have any more questions of the applicant? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All righty, bring it back to the staff not staff, the board for discussion or a motion.
Mr. Chairman, if it's worth it to him for $600, I'm certainly willing to make a motion to approve this variance.
All right. Okay. Motion by Commissioner Dumey to approve the variance. Thank you.
A second.
Second by Commissioner Ryan. Thank you. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. That was easy. All right. You sat here all night for that. Okay.
He's got $600 invested.
He paid $600. I hope we gave you $600 worth of entertainment. All righty. Here we go. Item 7 is special exemption. Oh, sorry. Once again, has anyone had ex parte communication on this matter?
No.
Seeing none, we'll carry on. Item number 7, special exemption. Approve a special exemption to allow an independent living facility in a RSF-1A zoning district. Owners, Husum Family Trust, applicant Lowndes Law. Location is 2021 Old Dixie Highway. Mrs. Sanchez.
Jean Sanchez with the Community Development Department. This is a special exception request to allow an independent living facility use in the RSF 1A zoning district. The property is located at 2021 Old Dixie Highway, north of US 441 and east of Shopkill Lester Road, approximately 10.4 acres in size. Aerial shows residential uses on the north, east, and west, and a mix of residential and commercial on the south. Per Land Development Code, Section 2.5.1 G4, special exception is required to comply with these standards also outlined in the staff report. The ILF is planned to be an age-restricted 55-plus community with supportive, passive, and active on-site recreational amenities and a total of 140 units to house senior residents. The applicant has redesigned the site to accommodate the number of items discussed at last month's Planning Commission meeting. And here is the new site plan that's been redesigned. It's an aerial. These are also included, I believe, in your packet. Shown is a line of sight exhibit with 144 feet of setback from the north property boundary to the closest proposed building. DRC recommends approval. At its meeting on January 10th, 2023, Planning Commission voted unanimously to table this item to a date certain of February 14th, 2023. The recommended motion is to approve the special exception to allow the independent living facility in the RSF 1A zoning district. Staff and applicant are available for questions. Also, the applicant has prepared a presentation.
Great, thank you, Ms. Sanchez. Anyone have questions of staff?
I have a question for
Commissioner
the city
Stanley.
attorney. Mr.
Okay.
Attorney. I work for the Agency for Healthcare Administration and the regulatory agency for these facilities. Should I exclude myself? I don't have any financial interest in this, but I do issue license, revoke license, suspend license, and investigate these types of facilities.
You don't have any economic interest on whether this goes forward one way or another. Also, I have some reservations as to whether this proposed use is even one that's regulated by your agency. This may be a use that's not even regulated by your agency. I would need some clarification. I need some clarification from the applicant.
Okay.
All right. Any more questions of staff? Okay, the applicant here has presentation. Name and address for the record, ma'am, please.
Hi, good evening. Tara Tedrow, Lowndes Law, 215 North Eola Drive, Orlando, Florida. Oh, perfect, okay. And no, I don't believe we have to get any licensure. The only restriction that we have is the 55 and up restriction on the use itself. So we don't have any memory care, skilled nursing, and we don't require licensure similar to an assisted living facility. So I don't believe, and our end user told us that we wouldn't need operational permits such as those, so I don't think there is a conflict.
Okay, I'm good with that.
You don't get out of it that easy, buddy. You're gonna watch. Okay, go ahead.
So as you heard from staff, tonight is a request for an approval of a special exception to allow an independent living facility in the RSF 1A zoning. Just to contextualize again, I know you all had a presentation similar to this some weeks back. This shows you the outline of where the project is located. We have some uses to the north that are single-family residential, except keep in mind that those properties are actually zoned for multifamily residential under RMF zoning to our north. To our east, we have single-family residential. To our south, we have commercial build-outs. And to our west, some additional single-family residential homes. We're located along Old Dixie Highway, and our proposed plans show you a prior site plan. I've put in the boxes the different uses that have changed or the parts of the plan that we have modified. So when I show you the next plan, this is, again, the revised plan has some similar features to what we had shown you a couple weeks back in terms of the compatibility of the design to be compatible with residential. The same 100-foot minimum setbacks are still shown on this plan, and the same number of units are still shown on this plan. Something to keep in mind with a special exception request. If we were building this project today by right under RSF 1A zoning, we would have 25-foot setbacks, and we would be building to 35 feet of height. So the request tonight is not with regards to anything that has to do with height. The 1+ foot height additional add-on was actually approved by staff administratively, which is allowable by code. So really the only request tonight has to do with the use itself. And so something that is good about a special exception is that your code contemplates special exceptions are compatible with conditions imposed. So we've added additional voluntary conditions above and beyond what anybody in the community would get if we just came for a by right RSF 1A zoned residential subdivision. So that means 4 times the setbacks. So again, if we pulled permits tomorrow, we'd have 25-foot setbacks. If you go with the special exception, we are offering minimum 100-foot setbacks from the property line. We're also going to be offering some additional enhancements to the plan as well that will come in the form of buffering and landscaping that otherwise code would not require of an RSF 1A zoned piece of property. So our updated plan shows a single-story clubhouse in the middle. There was a point of contention at the last hearing about the clubhouse portion closest to those properties to the north that are existing today, being 3 stories and that appearing too tall. 35 feet of height is permitted by right today on our property. It's permitted by right on all the properties around us too. So 3 stories can be built on all those properties to the north. They could knock their houses down and get up to 35 feet in height. So we took that down the clubhouse from 3 stories to a 1-story plan. And the remainder of the building height is really necessary when we talk to our end operator. This gives us the types of corridor lengths that we need to cater to a specific aged population. You don't want to have lengths of corridors being too long to get from clubhouses to units to access points. Gives us more exterior open space, greater setbacks from the neighboring properties, and less of an environmental impact. Our updated plan has amenities that include pickleball, community garden and gazebo, our clubhouse that we showed you with a pool, and then an outdoor walking trail with a dog run. We removed some of the amenities that also drew some complaints at the last hearing, so we took off the plan the tennis courts, sand volleyball courts, cornhole, badminton, and horseshoe pit areas. So we're confident that we still have a really nice mix of some active and passive opportunities for folks that would live here, but we took away some that the residents had said might have been too loud. And since the last hearing that we had, we did send a letter to everybody who spoke. So the folks that came and spoke at the hearing, we sent a letter to their house. I spoke to one on the phone and another one via email since then, just to make sure we were answering all of the questions that they had and to give them the opportunity to hear about the new plan that we were presenting and some of the changes that we made. Another one of the added enhancements to this plan. So again, in your code today, it says that if you are building single-family detached houses under by right zoning, there is 0 landscaping requirement, which means if we put in all of our RSF 1A zoned homes, we would have no requirement to put a single canopy tree in our backyard, not one. And so our plan is going to have enhanced landscape bufferings significantly above and beyond what would otherwise be required today. And again, you couldn't impose that in a by right zoning, but a special exception allows for the opportunity to add some of those conditions to ensure compatibility and buffering. So we are going to be adding bamboo walls adjacent to all residential lots. So around the perimeter of our property, around any residential lot that is there, we're going to be installing a bamboo wall. We're going to seek an early work permit to put that in. The type of bamboo is called a sea breeze varietal. We've actually brought a bamboo expert with us in case anybody had questions on bamboo. His name is Blake Hogshead, and if you've ever heard of the road, Hogshead Road, that is because I believe he's a 4th generation Apopka resident in the indoor horticulture and outdoor horticulture business. And he has taught me a lot about bamboo in the last couple of days and how the sea breeze varietal that we are planting is quick growing. It is not deciduous, meaning it doesn't drop a lot of plantings off of it, so it doesn't create mess like some bamboo would. It is clumping, so it creates a very dense wall, and it's beautiful with the way that it grows. If we get an early work permit, we'll have bamboo that would reach the height of 20 to 25, upwards of 30 feet prior to us having one of our residents move in, which means before we have our opening of our project, we will have a 20-foot high landscaped bamboo wall around the entire perimeter of our property. So the questions or comments that came up the last hearing about whether there was going to be a visual impact to the project, there most certainly will not be. Bamboo could not be required if we built by right, but bamboo is something we are offering as an additional condition. Also, we are still going to have a Type E landscape buffer under your code. So not only will we have a bamboo wall, the Type E landscape buffer is a 30-foot wide buffer that is also going to have 1 canopy tree per every 30 feet and shrubs at 42 inches on the center of planting. And those have to be planted, again, both of those at certain heights in certain intervals. So we're going to be having understory trees, canopy trees, a shrub line, a bamboo wall, all planted around the perimeter of our property, none of which would be required if we developed a typical single-family residential home by right today on that property. This shows you the enhanced landscaping plan. So you'll see a very dense green perimeter around our property everywhere that we have adjacent residential on the north, south, east, and to the west. And there's some existing trees that will remain on site as well. And this would be one of the conditions of approval. So you would be approving the special exception subject to the additional add-ons that are shown both in our site plan as well as our enhanced landscaping plan that was submitted to your staff for their records as well. This shows you a sea breeze bamboo privacy wall. Again, they grow very high. You can cut them back so that they, however you want to have them shaved down on the sides for height purposes or whatever height we want to get. But that would provide that thick screening wall between us and our neighbors. Not that we don't believe our project is going to be worth looking at, but the neighbors said that they wanted the screening. And again, this is the type of screening they're going to get better than anything that they would get today if we built under RSF 1A. Another question last time was, what does it look like? What is a line of sight compatibility? So we had our engineers and architects do that line of sight study for us. Again, the homes to our north are all zoned RMF, which means, and I took these pictures from your code of what RMF homes and zoning looks like. So the city code shows RMF to the north could have these types of buildings on it. So for compatibility purposes, what is being proposed on our property is actually what could be built on the property to the north of us today under their current zoning. Their standards, again, include multifamily townhomes, all the same height, 35 feet of height, as is allowed on our property. So the red squares on the screen show you where an existing single-family home could be built by right today. And I just showed the north property line. You could use this on the west and the east property lines as well. This shows you the homes in red, 25 feet setback from the property line, no landscaping buffer. That's how close they would be to the other homes that exist today. That is the line of sight to show that if we had a 2-story home, just a 2-story one, the red shows you where an existing wall would be on that north property line. That 2nd-story home would look directly over that wall into the neighbor's house behind us at a 25-foot setback. So in terms of a comparative line of sight, a line of sight impact is showing that it is going to be more impactful to be building RSF 1A zoned homes, 25 feet setback off the rear property line to where those homes are built today off of their property line. So there were some concerns about seeing into people's backyards. When we went to have our engineers and architects design this up, the only way you're seeing into the backyard is if we design something by right today and build 2-story homes along the perimeter of the property under existing code standards. Alternatively, again, we have minimum 100-foot setbacks and enhanced landscaping being proposed on our project. So we did a line of sight visual, and this is just showing it with bamboo screening. So that's not including canopy trees or understory trees or anything else. But if you look at that line of sight from adjacent properties with the setback that we have and the sloping, even if you're looking from a 3rd floor of a building over to the adjacent single-family homes where they sit today, you are not going to have that visual impact because, again, that 20-foot screening of a bamboo wall, which would be at 20 feet prior to us having our opening of our project, is going to allow and ensure that we have that visual screening that the residents had asked for at the last hearing. There's a lot of criteria. You all have been here for a while, so I won't go over everything in too painful of detail. Of course, if you have questions, happy to answer them, but all the special exception criteria have been analyzed by your staff. They agree that we are consistent with the goals, objectives, and policies of the comp plan, especially with the need for this type of housing. There are elements of your comprehensive plan that talk specifically about diversity of housing, and interestingly enough, there are no operating ILFs in the city of Apopka today. So we would be the only one. So providing a good diversity of housing for a 55 and up age-restricted community here in the city that otherwise does not exist. So we know that there is a market void because there's nobody else in the market currently offering this. The project will not just comply with the applicable zoning district standards, it will greatly exceed them, especially in terms of landscaping and the setbacks that we are providing. It will also comply with all the standards specific to principal uses. It will be appropriate for the location and is compatible with the general character of the surrounding lands. As you saw in the staff report, it says this allows local residents to be able to age in place. It's mostly comprised of residential housing around us with some real heavy commercial across the way. So otherwise, this provides a nice transitional use between what exists to our south and our northeast and our west. The external appearance of the structures is going to be built to have that residential feel, the sloping of the roof, so that we don't have any kind of institutional looking flat roof lines. They are meant to look like 3-story home structures. We had that adequate screening and buffering with the setbacks that we're proposing, 4 times the standards, with the buffering that we're proposing on the walls, as well as our 30-foot of additional landscape buffering under the Type E provisions of your code. Also is going to be designed in an attractive manner to minimize any adverse visual impacts, which we've confirmed by the line of sight study. In terms of lighting, we're going to have dark sky lighting, so there won't be any visual or lighting impacts on the properties adjacent to us. Confirm that as well with staff, that would be part of our plan. And we'll also maintain safe, convenient ingress and egress off the project site going onto Old Dixie Highway. It'll be designed in a safe and convenient manner. There are 5-foot sidewalks already along Old Dixie today. Of course, if Pam tells us anything needs to be done from a transportation standpoint when we go to submit those plans, we will. We did submit a traffic impact analysis that showed that everything operates at an acceptable level of service, very minimal amounts of traffic in the AM and the PM that are generated from a use like this. So no issue whatsoever in terms from a traffic standpoint or from an accessibility standpoint. And it will also be avoiding significant adverse odor, noise, glare, and vibration impacts on the surrounding lands, because this really is a low-intensity residential use geared toward an age-restricted population and will not have an adverse impact on land values around us. Also avoid significant deterioration of air, water resources and other natural resources. We have a great preservation of green space on the property. We're not overburdening existing public facilities, and we proved that through the TIA, and also there's capacity to serve the project. For utilities, and then we'll comply with all other relevant regulations. So our request is approval of the special exception consistent with staff's recommendation, as well as the voluntary additional conditions that we've shown in the new landscaping plan and the new site plan. Happy to answer any questions that you may have and would ask for the opportunity if any members of the public did show up tonight.
Thank you. Any questions of the applicant?
I've got
Commissioner
a comment, sir. Thanks for the enhanced buffering. And going back after our discussion last month, thank you for taking that into consideration here. I just look forward to hearing if there's any further community feedback around there. But the one question I did have, and I know this may be more related to the staff and the city attorney, but the city council meeting 2 weeks ago, the site plan for this was brought up, but it was tabled to March 1st. Is that to make changes to this?
No, it wasn't a site plan that was tabled. It was actually the It was the future land use map
Okay,
amendment was what was tabled. So,
So you guys withdrew it from the, what, I believe.
no,
the
no,
agenda.
the second reading was, the second reading is pushed to, this is one where the second reading was pushed to the March 15th hearing.
We
Or
pushed,
sorry, or
yeah,
March
No, I thought
1st.
you guys- I
Got my
thought you
dates
guys
mixed up.
said that they
March
pulled it.
1st instead of it being heard at second reading tomorrow, second reading is pushed to March 1st. And it was noticed as such.
I think first and second got pushed.
Yeah,
So we had to
right. You
push
pushed the
both
whole
of
thing.
them. And
Okay,
that was,
so-
again, just to come back tonight because we originally didn't know whether we were going to be able to get some extensions on the contract, quite frankly, is the only reason why the last time we took the vote on the future land use instead of tabling everything to come back before you tonight, because we knew we still had a month left of hearings for the future land use portion. But all of that is based around this project, this special exception getting approved. So we wanted to make sure when we go before city council that they know exactly what we're promising and what we're proposing and that that's set in stone so that there's no question that we're telling them one thing and we come back to you and we have a different plan. So that if any residents showed up to that hearing, we could tell them the exact same thing that we presented to you tonight and have that same plan of record so that everybody knew that these were going hand in hand and the approval doesn't allow anything other than, what we are asking for tonight.
Okay, and so to that point, was there any follow-up comments from the public? Because I know there was a lady again at the meeting last.
Yep, so every letter we sent out that were sent on 131 and 22 were in response to those who showed up both at this hearing as well as at that hearing and
Yeah,
public
2-1,
comment.
Right.
Yep, so we sent those letters out immediately after both of the hearings so that we could solicit feedback from the folks who had come and spoken.
Okay. And there's no continued negative feedback? What was the results?
No, and I had sent 2 follow-up emails to one of the individuals who lived to the west.
Okay.
He had asked for some information, so I sent the follow-up with all of the information, the buffers. I basically sent a lot of the slides, the same thing I'm showing you tonight.
Right.
Followed up again and said, any other questions? Hadn't heard back yet. And then the other individual I spoke to on the phone twice was fine. He was appreciative when we described the different setbacks and the buffers that we were going to be putting in and said bamboo sounds nice as a visual buffer and was understanding of the changes that we made and had no other objection. And I followed up via email just to say, just want to make sure you didn't have anything else. And so other than that, we haven't received any responses back.
Good. I would think that the bamboo wall and the enhanced oak trees would be probably a best case scenario for this. So that's good.
It really is a beautiful visual buffer. I mean, they use it a lot in places like the Villages and anywhere that you want to have a nice, large screen. Trees are amazing. We still have a bunch of them in
Right.
our plan. But from a visual blockade standpoint, canopy trees can't be planted close together, right? But clumping bamboo can, so it literally creates a wall. Jim actually just told me that cars were driving through a brick wall in a neighborhood near him, and they kept going through the brick wall, but they couldn't get through the bamboo wall because it is that thick. So
I'll expand real quick. At the corner of Christiana and Votah, Christiana dead ends going north into Votah, and I think it's, oh boy, I don't even remember the subdivision to the north. That has probably had at least 4 cars going through the wall into somebody's backyard. So where it kept getting broken apart, the property owner planted bamboo. And the last one that went through was probably about 6 or 8 months ago, and it stopped after it went through the brick wall on the bamboo. I mean, it's just,
Yeah, you can't kill it.
yeah.
I don't want that in my
Questions
yard.
of the
so-
applicant.
That's good.
Yeah,
Commissioner Ryan.
I have a few questions. So when we tabled that January meeting, I assumed you notified the neighbors of this meeting tonight?
So our letter that was sent out to the neighbors that had showed up was yes, to have a conversation with them before the tabled meeting that we were having tonight.
You only notified the people that showed up last time. Is that what you said? Or do you-
Correct. We followed up with the ones that had showed up to make complaints at that time or ask questions at that time.
So are you replacing all 3 sides of the fence, or are you just using the existing fences?
So the west side does not have a fence, so we would have a 6-foot fence put in. There is existing fence and walling along the perimeter. I think when I had talked to the client, they said if we need to put up new fencing behind that bamboo, fine,
Yeah,
but
because
there is
of
some
that-
existing.
Some of that fencing is pretty old back there, and it's not continuous and doesn't look right. What else was I gonna say? What type of fence do we put on the west side?
A 6-foot opaque fence is what we were told. It hadn't been specified.
You know,
I think what code would
like a vinyl
allow.
fence, you mean?
Say that again?
Like a vinyl fence?
A vinyl or a wood fence.
I'm not excited about that. And, okay, but you won't be able to see it from the road though, I assume, right?
And the fence would be behind our bamboo wall.
No, no.
Yeah.
No. And I assume it's non-invasive bamboo?
Non-invasive, that's correct.
Okay. And what else? I see you have a lot of parking spaces, but you only have 6 accessible parking spaces. And considering your average tenant is going to be around 70 to 75, I'm thinking, independent living, don't you think you need more than the minimum for accessible parking?
So that, we can increase that. That was designed just to show code standards
Just the
for,
bare minimum?
but we can add more to the plan.
I mean, I would think, you don't have to, but I would think you should, my opinion is. Because it's not ADA required for some reason on a system, I mean, not assisted, independent living. When you first notified all the neighbors, how many letters did you send out? Did you send out certified mail or just first-class mail?
I believe when we sent the letters out, both of those went out first-class mail to the 5 residents that had shown up between the two.
No, I'm talking about back in, I think it's December was the first time.
Well, they don't,
Oh, when we first had our community meeting?
No, to notify, don't you have to send out letters to notify the neighbors? I think
the city does.
The city does that.
the
They don't
city,
do that, the city does. That's Jim.
is that Mr. Hitt?
The city
Pay
notice
attention
that you
here.
sent out?
Certified mail.
The
Sorry,
city
the applicant
notified, not the
notifies the
developer.
neighbors. We provide the mailing list, and the applicant sends out the certified list.
Okay, the city mails it out or you just give up?
The applicant
I'm
mails
sorry,
them
you're
out.
right. So we sent that out on forms required by the city, and those were city notices sent out by certified
And
mail.
they tell you how many people and who to send it to, correct?
Correct. Correct.
Okay. All right. Because I keep hearing people telling me, not in this project, but other project that they never got notified. How much space, how much distance from the
300
project?
feet.
I'm sorry?
300 feet, not including roads.
Okay. I think that covers all my notes. Thank you very much.
All right. Any more questions of the applicant? All right.
Thank you.
Cedar, thank you. Does anyone from the public wish to speak on this matter? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board. Congratulations, Mrs. Tedrow. That was a very well thought out compromise and nobody came back, so you did your job. Bring it back to the board for further discussion and a vote.
Mr. Chair, if I may, I just want to advise the board, and this is something I did discuss this with staff in anticipation of this meeting coming up. And this is something where legally it's giving me some heartburn. And that is, unless the applicant can show with competent substantial evidence that this use is consistent with the defined uses for group living uses under the LDC, which would allow such a use to be a special exception in this specific zoning category. My concern is that what was raised and the applicant's presentation is that this as an independent living facility. An independent living facility is not defined under the LDC. So what is defined is assisted living facility, adult living facility, extended congregate care, adult foster home, boarding house or rooming house, child foster home, continuing care retirement community, emergency shelter or home, or family daycare home. Those are the group living uses that are permitted under the RSF 1A zoning district. The applicant has stated that, one, this use is not regulated by the agency. I just blanked on the name of the agency. So therefore, it's not necessarily an assisted living facility because it's not regulated as such. In essence, what this use is a multifamily age-restricted community, no different than a deed-restricted, age-restricted single-family home community. As many of those, I haven't seen many around here. I came up from Palm Beach County, where they're a dime a dozen, where you have 54 communities. Or my mother-in-law lives in a 55 and over community. They're duplexes. The only restriction is that they must, to meet the Fair Housing Act, they must at least strive for 100% occupancy by persons that are 55 and over. So the issue is the applicant must show with competent substantial evidence that the amenities and the services that are being provided are consistent with that of an assisted living facility or a continuing care retirement community in order to be consistent with what would be subject to a special exception use, and not just getting a multifamily use through the back door on a single family zoning district. Now, they will have the density by accomplishing their future land use amendment. However, the property will still remain RSF 1A, and without it meeting the legal definition of what those group living uses are, that use, which is simply multifamily with an age restriction, is not a permitted use by right, nor a special exception use under RSF 1A, which would then require the applicant to seek a zoning amendment to allow to put a multifamily use, which would be consistent with their request to amend the land use amendment. So it's a weird backdoor way of getting this use in, because they can't get this use in because they didn't meet the densities. However, the zoning code allows for group living uses to meet these requirements, to meet these under a special exception. But because they don't offer the amenities that assisted living facility or continuing care retirement community provides, but are merely, this is just it's an apartment complex for people over 55, then they needed to meet the density. But at this point, I believe that I don't think they're allowed by right, nor are they eligible for a special exception based on the use as they have provided to this commission. So if the applicant shows you enough evidence that they're consistent with those defined terms, and you're comfortable with that, then go ahead and prove it as a special exception. But I'm just advising you that part of the application, as well as what the code provides, that's giving me some heartburn to advise you one way or another, that can I advise that this is a legally permitted special exception use based on the evidence provided in the application. I mean, my advisement is this is multifamily with an age restriction, and it's not consistent with what the definitions are. I mean, if you want me to read the definition under our code, an assisted living facility is a facility that provides living and sleeping facilities and care for 4 or more individuals who, because of advanced age or physical or mental disability, require intermittent assistance in performing the activities of daily living, which may include the supervision and or administration of medication in a protective environment. Such care includes but is not limited to meal preparation, laundry services, housekeeping, personal observation, and direction in the activities of daily living, transportation for routine social and medical appointments, and the availability of a responsible adult for companionship or non-clinical counseling. The use does not include a nursing home facility. A continuing care retirement community, which is defined and is listed as a special exception use, is an integrated development that offers senior citizens a full continuum of housing options and assistance, ranging from fully independent dwelling units to assistance with personal care in assisted living facilities to long-term skilled nursing care in a nursing home facility. So in group living uses, and the group living uses category includes use types providing for residential occupancy of a group of living units by persons who sometimes do not constitute a single family, but not always, and may receive some level of personal care. Individual living units often consist of a single room or group of rooms without cooking or eating facilities, even though some do have such facilities. But unlike a hotel, motel, are generally occupied on a monthly or longer basis. Use types include assisted living facilities, group residential facilities, boarding or rooming homes, convents or monasteries, fraternity or sorority houses, and similar uses. Although continuing care retirement communities include housing living unit uses and healthcare uses, they are categorized as a group living use because of their focus on the present or future provision of personal care to senior citizens and their integration of various uses as a single cohesive development. This use category does not include use. I'll try and keep it through what's really relevant. So those are the things that I have a concern about on the consistencies. However, if the applicant can come and state that their amenities, their facilities and they can show and prove to you with competent substantial evidence that they'll meet what our code defines as a group living use, as an assisted living facility, or even a continuing care retirement community, and they meet that, and you believe they've met that burden, then you can go ahead and approve the.
I'm saying, if it's legally questionable, why is it in front of us?
The applicant has proceeded forward to make that request, and their argument is that their position is that they're consistent with the defined terms for an assisted living facility
Would they win
For
in-
our code,
per the code.
our code.
Would they win in court?
Who would fight them? For what reason?
No, it would be the question is what.
If we denied it, and the city council denied it, and they took us to court, who would win?
I will never predict who can win in court, but I believe that the city is on strong footing that based on what has been presented, and I also take into consideration, because this matter was tabled and brought forward, I need to take into consideration what the applicant presented at the first meeting, in which their representative stated, oh no, that I think the question was, is this, what was the language of the term that was used? Kind of you go in and you're going to graduate from one level of care to the next level of care, kind of to, I don't want to say die in place. I don't think that was the term.
Age in place.
Age in place, thank you. And I think it was stressed that it was like, no.
I'm doing that in the chair right now.
So, and I think the applicant, the representative for the applicant at that point said, no, this is not an age in place, because if you're going to need further care, you're going to go somewhere else. And I think the intent of the code is to take into an age in place. If this were a use where you had independent living facilities in one aspect of the location, and then an assisted living facility in another, I think then you can justify, well, there are amenities there, and you're graduating, quote unquote, to more intense services. Then it can't be arguable. But I think based on the presentation of what the uses are, and I advised staff of this prior to this coming forward here, that this is basically, from what I can gather and my advisement, this is a multifamily use with an age restriction.
I agree with that.
All right.
Yeah.
Ms. Cedar, would you like to retort?
This is the first I'm hearing of this, so if you see a look of surprise on my face, that is partially why. Hold on just one second. So in terms of the way that we've analyzed this under your code, your code does have what I would consider to be some antiquated definitions. So it doesn't necessarily capture everything that is in what a senior living bubble of the market would capture, your code doesn't talk about skilled nursing. It doesn't talk about memory care, but it talks about assisted living facilities. And those are certainly components of some assisted living facilities, but you also have standalone nursing facilities and standalone memory care facilities, but your code doesn't talk about those. So we have something that would fall under your definitions for group living uses, where it talks about, if you look broadly, group residential facilities, boarding or rooming houses. All of these fall under something that is age restricted to seniors. So while I agree that the exact term of independent living facility is not within your code, this is restricted so that only those 55 and up would be able to live there, and it is different than a traditional multifamily development. First, we provide dining, housekeeping, activities, 24-hour security, concierge services, emergency response, and third-party care services that can come on site. So those are not offered at a traditional multifamily development. So that is specific to the fact that we have seniors as our residents on the property. And so under that group living facility and under the definitions that you have in your code, where it talks about how these can include assisted living facilities, group residential facilities that provide more than just dwellings. They provide other services as well. So the fact that we have our clubhouse to provide those dining services to our residents so that they don't have to cook every day, that we offer the cleaning of their units to help with those that are age restricted to not have to do those services either. All of that is built in to the monthly care package that we give to our residents. Do they need a nurse in each of their units? No, we don't have licensed nurses on staff. That's something that is separate. But your definitions are very broad under your group living uses that would allow us to fall under that special exception. So I don't think we'd had this conversation before discussing the the concierge, the healthcare services that can come on site, the meals being provided, or the housekeeping that gets provided to our residents. I think that makes us distinct from what is a traditional multifamily use. We certainly went down this path working with staff since last June, so wasn't a backdoor by any means. I mean, this is the first time I'm hearing tonight that there might be a question about the definition. But I think also, too, in the housing element of your comprehensive plan, it talks about how group housing facilities, again, which, group living uses and group housing facilities, different terms being used different in your comp plan and your code, but they are kind of encompassing some broader range of uses. It says group housing facilities are presently allowed in all zoning categories by special exception in the city. So your comp plan very clearly says group housing facilities are allowed by special exception in every single zoning category. So what we are asking for is the exact type of group housing facility that per your comp plan is allowed in every single zoning category by special exception. So our request for a special exception very much is in line already with broad definitions as well as what your comprehensive plan sets out.
Great, thank you very much. Anyone have questions of the applicant?
Well, I'm kind of bothered that this is the first time we've heard about this. I know you had a different attorney back in January.
I don't believe this was a conversation we've had.
No, the issue.
Mr. Hitt, is that true?
Hold on. When it was presented, and this was one where we tried to also rearrange the request, and I had asked the attorney, let's do the land use amendment first, and then he went forward and did the special exception. However, I want to point out that what my advisement was that at least for the record, and if that was sufficient for you to accept, I appreciate for Ms. Tidrow to actually make the case as to why this use is consistent with what amenities are going to be available to this use, to make it consistent with the group home uses that are allowed as special exceptions. I think with it being on the record, and I need it to be clear, and I needed that distinction because your predecessor did not make that, did basically just said, no, we're not providing any services. That was the first red flag when that was up, and then it was tabled at that point, which led me, because the presentation was being made, asking for a special exception for ALF, and then the applicant gets up and says, no, we're not agent place. That first part of the application leads me to believe that, and based on the presentations, well, no, I've got an age restricted apartment. That's why I stressed when I stated that if the applicant can come and make the justification with competent substantial evidence, and I cannot judge whether the evidence is competent substantial. That's for you guys to judge. But if the presentation is such that there are amenities that are being placed on this use that are consistent with what is defined under our group homes, then it's for your determination to make that whether or not the applicant has satisfied the requirements for a special exception in this use. Just simply alone, and even the first presentation, we went off on I don't call it a tangent, but we did focus on a lot of the concerns of the neighbors, but a lot of the neighbors' concerns weren't related to the use. It was going to be the impacts of the property, the sight lines, the buffering, and all of those. It's the use, at least in those cases, is irrelevant. However, if you believe the applicant has satisfied the issue that the use is consistent with a group home that would then enable them to be eligible for the special exception, then go right ahead and rule. Now I'm going to be more comfortable if your decision is such that, yes, based on the evidence that was presented by the applicant, it is consistent with the city's definition of a group use, group living use under our LDC, then I am applicant than any challenges that are made by a third party that both the city and the applicant have a stronger footing to argue as such. Just simply stating that we have a kind of an advanced enhanced residential use alone, and that the only thing that differentiates this multifamily residential use from any other multifamily residential use is that the tenancy is restricted to those 55 or over. I mean, not to give away, but I qualify for that in 4 years.
I think
So, I mean, it's, I'm not that far away, and scary as it may seem to me.
What's the city's definition of group home?
That's what I read it earlier. No, it's not group home, group living uses. But I read it, I don't want to read it again, I can read it again in the record, but it's usually residential uses.
This is deteriorating to a back and forth lawyer fight.
Oh, no, I don't think we're fighting.
I think we agree now.
We're actually not fighting.
I think we
Please
agree
don't
on the
reread that whole
definition.
thing again, I can't take it.
No, I know, I don't want to.
A couple things really in a nutshell, just to summarize. Ms. Tedrow basically justified the special exception with the extra amenities that they're going to be offering for the facility. In addition, they've also answered pretty much every question regarding the property, the sight line distance, the bamboo, the perimeter buffering, the types of uses and where they're putting it up. And basically, they answered all the questions.
Mr. Chair, basically, and for all intents and purposes and for all candor, I needed the record to be cleaned up.
I got you.
And I appreciate-
You got to draw
I
your
appreciate
line in
that.
the sand.
Yeah, and just one last point, I don't want to belabor this too much longer, but I agree and I appreciate, because if there is ever a challenge, I'd like the record to be as clean as possible. I think one of the really operative sentences in that group living facilities definition is accessory uses common to group living facilities include recreational facilities, administrative offices, food preparation, and dining facilities. That's everything that we have, plus we do our added care if you need it. We just don't have assisted living, which I think might have been the distinction my colleague was making, but the record didn't include all the other services that are provided that do fall under group living facilities.
What's the added care?
Added care meaning if you want to have home care coming onto site, our administration will coordinate that for you to come up to your units to provide that additional care, but we're not a skilled
But that's a
nursing
third
facility or
party,
memory
though.
care or.
But that's not service you provide, that's a third-party service, right?
Well, correct, but we still have all the other things that check every box that they say uses common are rec, administrative offices, food preparation, dining facilities, and that's specific to a group living facility definition in the code. So we would meet those definitions because of the additional uses that we are providing, which weren't specified at the first hearing.
And also you said it's not assisted living, it's just independent living.
Correct, which under your code, group living facilities includes a lot of different senior care, but it specifically says accommodations are not where you need more than modest healthcare services, because those are nursing homes and those go under your healthcare uses category. So that's why I think the distinction was being drawn, that we weren't a healthcare use category. We didn't have those extra services that make you an assisted living facility or a nursing home. The independent living facility therefore falls under group living facilities in that broad definition, including the customary uses that are required for it, which we have all of them on site.
Does the state of Florida have a definition for independent living?
I don't know, but if this type of use is not regulated by
No.
the agency for, was it
Just
eight, then it's not, it's outside of the purview of this commission to even take that into consideration. I mean, we're here to administer the land development code, not necessarily Florida statutes.
Well, I know, I just wonder if it's really age restricted or independent living.
I mean, not to simplify it, but it's like we're parsing words. Is it this? Is it that? I think the bigger question in front of us, is it appropriate for the area to give an exception? Is it something that fits in? Is it something that's transitional from residential to commercial? And then, you know, the getting down to the nitty gritty on how that is specifically defined, you know, would it matter if it's an independent living facility or it was, we wanted to give it a special exemption for a retail in an area that was residential? I think it's more that we're going to look at, is this applicable? Does it make sense? Is everybody happy with it? Does it improve the city? Is it a good transition? And I think we're getting down into the details about what the code says specifically and trying to hinge everything on that. I think we make just a good judgment decision based on, does that work? Does it work for the area?
To your point, Mr. Chairman, I think the applicant has made that argument that this is a good use for this. They have worked very hard with the neighbors to make sure that the neighbors' concerns were placated. They've listened to our concerns to make sure that they have appropriate buffering and made significant changes to their site, and I'm very satisfied with that. And I'm perfectly fine making a motion to move to approve this special exemption.
And I would second it.
Motion by Commissioner Dumey for approval. Any further discussion?
I said I would second it.
Oh, I didn't hear what you said. You're in Norwood Acres. I have a
I'm in
hard time
Norwood.
hearing you down there. Okay, second by Commissioner Norwood. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. We need to break anybody? Are we good? Plug along?
Let's get it done.
All right. Let's, okay. All right, on to site plans. That's interesting. All right. Item number one on the site plan, major development plan, North Star Logistics Center 2, owners CLPF Cadence North Star Phase 2 LLC, care of Todd Wangston, manager. Applicants Florida Engineering Group, care of Sam J. Cibali, P.E. Location is 735 and 815 Johns Road. Ms. Sanchez.
For the record, Jean Sanchez with the Planning and Zoning Division. This is a request to recommend approval of the North Star Logistics Center 2 Major Development Plan. The property is located on the northwest corner of Johns Road and State Road 451, approximately 26.4 acres in size. Aerial shows industrial complex on the east, residential uses on the north, west, and south. The major development plan proposes an industrial warehouse center that includes 2 buildings. The buildings total 240,517 square feet in area and are proposed to be single-story with a maximum height of 45 feet. While 79 parking spaces are required for both buildings, 271 parking spaces are proposed. In addition to the building setback of 131 feet, there's an existing opaque fence as well as proposal of southern magnolia, winged elms, shimmered oaks, and high-rise live oak trees adjacent to Lakeside Residential Subdivision. The applicant meets the open space requirement with the proposal of a mulch trail along the top of Pond 1, the easternmost portion of the project area which connects to the pedestrian walkway at the front of the site. Site is designed in accordance with the requirements and intent of the Land Development Code. 2 entrances are proposed with right turn lanes to serve the project from Johns Road on the south side of the project site. Architectural elevation meets the city's development design guidelines for industrial uses. The DRC recommends approval. The recommended motion is to recommend approval of the North Star Logistics Center 2 Major Development Plan. Staff is available for questions.
Anyone have questions of staff?
Yeah, can you show me pictures of the west side of Building 2? Which one would that be?
West side of Building 2. Well, I see just a western elevation.
I'm sorry?
There's only a western elevation. Are you talking about architectural renderings?
Yeah, because I'm worried about the neighborhood.
There's one on the lower right-hand corner with the west elevation.
East is right above it.
And east is right above.
And that's going to be 45
So that's the one
feet?
facing Lakeside.
And that's 40 feet tall, 45 feet tall?
That's the maximum height permitted.
And it backs up to a single-family neighborhood, right?
It backs up to a planned development, right? Lakeside Estates.
And what kind of buffer is there between, between the the building and the neighborhood on the east side, or west side, I'm sorry?
So the required buffer in terms of code, they have an alternative between 3 buffers. One of them is to provide a wall, a masonry or opaque wall with a 5-foot wide landscape buffer. Another option is a 25-foot wide landscape buffer, which is what they require. But there's already an existing opaque fence there for Lakeside.
So wouldn't the 25-foot buffer be better with the,
Yeah, that's what they did, is they provided, it's actually more than 25 feet of setback and buffering. I I'm sorry, it escapes me how wide that buffering is, but it's more than, it's above and beyond what the requirement is per code for that alternative. And because there was an opaque fence there, the applicant chose to have the 25-foot wide landscape buffer rather than providing a 5-foot wide buffer and a wall.
And so I assume there'll be some tall trees there to mask that.
High-rise oaks, right, winged elms, southern magnolias, they did alternatives of all of those.
Okay.
Anybody have any further questions of staff? All right, is the applicant here? Do you have a presentation?
No, sir, the applicant's not here.
Okay. Does anyone from the public wish to speak on this matter? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board for further discussion or motion.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to recommend approval of the North Star Logistics Center 2 Major Development Plan, subject to the findings in the staff report.
Thank you. Motion by Commissioner Washington. Do I have a second? Second by Commissioner Rendo. Thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right. Site development number 2, major development plan, Natura Vista. Owners, Natura Vista LLC. Applicants, Cycorp Engineering, care of Kim Fisher PE. Location 4185 West Orange Blossom Trail and 4160 Wilkins Street. Ms. Sanchez.
For the record, Jean Sanchez with the Planning and Zoning Division. This is a request to recommend approval of the Natura Vista Major Development Plan. Property is located on the southeast corner of Wilkins Street and Orange Blossom Trail, approximately 3.09 acres in size. The aerial shows residential uses on the north and east. The Windward Hills Planned Development, which is a mix of residential and commercial uses on the south, and the Orlando Apopka Airport on the west. The major development plan details the construction of 46 multifamily units within the MUESGT Mixed-Use East Shore Gateway Subdistrict. The project consists of 2 apartment buildings and 2 garage buildings with a proposed building height of almost 40 feet. Total of 69 parking spaces are required, and the applicant is proposing 98 spaces, including 4 accessible spaces. The MDP shows a sidewalk along the project frontage on State Road 441, connecting to an internal walkway and a continuation of the sidewalk to the Wilkins Street frontage. The applicant is required to preserve 0.3 acre, 10% of the project area for active or passive recreation and amenity. They are proposing approximately 1 acre for a dog park and green space. State Road 441 and Wilkins frontages are decorated with a mix of southern magnolias and crepe myrtles. Winged elms adorn the landscape parking islands. This project will have 2 full access connections to Wilkins Street, which is more than adequate to serve a development of this size. The applicant is required to rebuild Wilkins Street and widen slightly so it meets minimum city standards. The right turn lane will be striped on Wilkins Street, so thorough movement and right turn movement on westbound Wilkins Street are separate lanes. Finally, a modified right turn lane will be constructed on US 441 to allow driver wishing to make a right turn onto Wilkins Street to move right out of the lane of traffic while making the turn. The architectural renderings meet the city's intent of the development design guidelines. The DRC recommends approval, and the recommended motion is to recommend approval of the Natura Vista Major Development Plan. Staff and applicant are available for questions.
Thank you, Ms. Sanchez. Any questions of staff? All righty, would the applicant like to make their presentation? Okay. Applicant's available for questions. Anyone have a question of the applicant? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board for discussion and a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move we recommend approval of Natura Vista Major Development Plan, subject to the findings of the staff report.
Thank you. Motion by Commissioner Rendo. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Dumey. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right. Site plan number 3, major development plan, Oaks at Monroe. Owners, Apopka Monroe Development LLC. Applicant, Sitecorp Engineering, care of Kim Fisher PE, 730 Monroe Avenue. Mrs. Sanchez.
Jean Sanchez with the Community Development Department. This is a request to recommend approval of the Oaks at Monroe Major Development Plan. The property is located north of State Road 436 and south of Monroe Avenue, approximately 5.74 acres in size. The aerial shows residential uses on the north and commercial uses on the east, south, and proposed commercial on the west. The Oaks of Monroe Major Development Plan comprises of 86 multifamily units within the MUD, Mixed-Use Downtown Zoning District. The project consists of 3 apartment buildings in which each unit has a minimum living area of 750 square feet. The proposed building height is 41.3 feet. A total of 128 parking spaces are required, and the applicant is proposing 140 spaces, including 8 accessible spaces. The MDP shows a walkway leading to the sidewalk along State Road 436. The applicant is required to preserve 10% of the project area for open space or amenity, and they are proposing 17%, approximately 1 acre. The amenity program includes a clubhouse, pool, and a dog park. The State Road 436 frontage is embellished with hollies and preserved oak trees. Live oaks and southern magnolias are placed along the western and eastern boundaries. Live oaks also front the Monroe Avenue frontage. This project will have a single access to the roadway network on Monroe Avenue. A second emergency access will also be provided on Monroe Avenue via stabilized surface and locked gate. Project also has cross connectivity to the west near the southwest corner of the project. Based on the city's Land Development Code Section 5.16.5B3D2, there shall be a rebuttal presumption that a left turn lane shall be required for all residential and non-residential developments unless waived by City Council. Therefore, at the construction site plan review, the project will be required to include a left turn lane on Monroe at the site entrance. The proposed architecture meets the standard of the development design guidelines. Here it is. The DRC recommends approval. The recommended motion is to recommend approval of the Oaks at Monroe Major Development Plan. Staff and applicant are available for questions.
Thank you, Ms. Sanchez. Anyone have questions of staff?
Yes, I do. Quick question.
Commissioner Washington.
What does it mean by cross connectivity to the southwest near the southwest corner of the project? What's that mean?
So this connectivity right here.
Connects to the property next door.
Right now, this adjacent property is vacant, but the property next to this one is the Winn-Dixie property. So we're trying to have sidewalks and connectivity along the MUD
okay.
properties. Yeah,
Because Winn-Dixie is further down.
correct. Yep.
Any further questions of staff?
No, sir.
Any questions of the applicant?
That'll give us more customers for Winn-Dixie.
Yep. We're bringing residential downtown. Yay.
And the Miller's Ale House as well.
Yep.
All right. Do you have a presentation, ma'am? Would you like to speak? Name and address for the record, please.
For the record, Kim Fisher, Sitecorp Engineering, 1614 White Dove Drive, Winter Springs. I don't have a presentation, but I do want to say for the record, thank you for allowing me the opportunity to have McDonald's on Valentine's Day.
I think that's what I'm gonna do as well.
Yeah.
I feel your pain. I promise you I'm in trouble when I get home. All right. All right, bring it back. Does anyone from the public wish to speak on this matter? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board for discussion or motion.
I'll make a motion, Mr. Chairman, to approve the Oaks at Monroe Major Development Plan, subject to the findings and the staff report.
Thank you. Motion by Commissioner Stanley. Do I have a second?
Second.
Tie between Commissioner Washington and Lorindo,
Second.
so we're going to give it to Commissioner Washington. Second? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Major site plan number 4, major development plan, Wingspan ABC Kelly Park. Owners, PMS1 REO LLC, Harvey Goodwin, Sapp Rodney D. Life Estate, and Sandra D. Sapp. Applicants, Polos and Bennett LLC, care of Lance Bennett PE. Location, northwest corner of Kelly Park Road and Plymouth Sorrento Road. Ms. Sanchez.
Jean Sanchez with the Planning and Zoning Division. This is a request to recommend approval of the Wingspan ABC Kelly Park Major Development Plan. You've seen this property before. It is located on the northwest corner of Kelly Park Road and Plymouth Sorrento Road, approximately 21.36 acres in size. And just to clarify, there is a note on there on the cover sheet of the staff report stating that the future land use for this is county rural has actually been amended and adopted, and the current future land use designation for this property is mixed use, so apologies for that. The master plan for this development was approved on September 21, 2022 as a companion to rezoning ordinance number 2936 that established the Kelly Park Interchange Mixed-Use Zoning District for this property. The major development plan proposes a total of 368 multifamily units encompassing 156 one-bedroom units, 168 two-bedroom units, and 44 three-bedroom units. And that equates to approximately 18 dwelling units per acre. The commercial development consists of 45,200 square feet for restaurants, retail, and office uses with a proposed total floor area of 0.75. The proposed access point for this project are on Kelly Park Road and Plymouth Sorrento Road. Please disregard the statement about the southernmost access on PSR on Plymouth Sorrento Road. They actually are only proposing one access on there. It's a full access with right-in and left turn lanes at this entrance. And at the time Kelly Park Road is widened to 4 lanes, the full access may be closed off by a median, resulting in right-in, right-out only, or right-in, right-out left in access connection to the site. Cross connections to the west and north are also provided. The amenity open space program comprises of 2.74 acres that includes covered pavilion, pocket parks with benches, plazas, pool with deck and lounge areas, as well as green passive spaces and a playground. The project site is embellished with red maple, southern magnolia, live oak, Japanese blueberry, and dahoon holly trees. Here's the proposed architectural renderings for the multifamily. The DRC recommends approval. The recommended motion is to recommend approval of the Wingspan ABC Kelly Park Major Development Plan. Staff and applicant are available for questions.
Thank you, Ms. Sanchez. Any questions of staff?
Yeah, I have some.
Commissioner Ryan.
Imagine that. The exit on the West Kelly Park Road, I assume there's gonna be no light there. Is it gonna be right turn only, or are there left turns and right turns?
It says it's restricted right turn.
I'll defer that to our transportation planner, Pam Richmond.
You're talking at the entrance that they have on Kelly Park Road? We don't have a signal planned right there. We have signals planned in other places that might turn into a directional entrance.
Right, but I'm worried about this. What about a crosswalk? Because I know people are gonna go to Publix and walk across a 4-lane road. Actually, be 5 lanes probably.
That'll be handled. We're designing the 4-laning of Kelly Park Road right now, and those are the items that we'll be looking at when we, during the design.
Do you think there'll be a crosswalk there, or?
I don't know. Are we far enough yet? Okay, we're not far enough yet.
Okay.
But because it's supposed to be walkable here in general, those things will be looked at along the whole corridor.
All right, thank you, Ms. Richmond. Okay.
And
Any
I have-
further questions, staff?
Oh, yeah, no, I have one of the applicants.
Okay. Is the applicant here?
Good evening, Planning Commissioners, and for the record, Phil Martinez, Senior Planner with Paulus and Bennett, located at 2602 East Livingston Street, Orlando, Florida, zip code 32803.
You seem vaguely familiar.
Welcome back again.
Thank you.
Some of your ADA accessible parking doesn't make sense. It's supposed to be the closest accessible to the entrances. Like, I'll give you an example, Building 3, Type 1, they've got one in the middle of the parking lot, and then they got one next to a storm area. I mean, you don't need access to a storm area.
Commissioner Ryan, are you referring to
Yes.
this one right
Yes.
here?
Yes, correct.
If I recall correctly, is that?
We do have some Elkia at Lance Bennett, Folsom Bennett, same address.
Could you speak up a little, sir? You have a hard time hearing you.
With regards to the ADA, obviously, we'll work through under the final engineering, any adjustments that are necessary. I think right there, we do have an accessible ADA garage that's providing a spot, excuse me, to service that.
The one next to the storm treatment area?
Correct, which is
That's the garage.
sorry. Right here, you got a walk over to a garage.
Where's the garage? The upper right-hand corner of that parking lot?
Right through here.
So you got 2 accessible parking for that garage. What about for Building 3? I don't see any for Building 3, which is just below your garage to the left.
I'm sorry, for which?
Building 3.
Building 3, Type 1, 4-story, 36 units.
Yeah, let me get a hard copy. I can't see it well on that screen. Is it 3? Hey, Commissioner, I guess we can look at that. If we need to add an additional spot, we certainly can do that.
Yeah. I think you need to. I think every building entrance should have at least one accessible parking.
Understood.
To the closest entrance.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, it's just a minor fix.
Yeah.
Any more questions of the applicant?
No, sir.
All right. Anyone from public wish to speak on this matter? Unless you're hiding under a chair, that would be no. Bring it back to the board for discussion or a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we approve of the Wingspan ABC Kelly Park Major Development Plan, subject to the findings in the staff report.
Thank you. Motion by Commissioner Norwood. Do I have a second? Second by Commissioner Rendo. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Any old business? Do we have any new business? Thank you very much. Motion adjourned.
Thank you all.
Meeting adjourned.